advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back to another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Hope you guys are having a lovely day. Thank you so much for joining us. We might be having a special guest, a friend of mine, Shane Meckland. He's a Republican representative from Minnesota. He's got a first-hand witness account, front row seat to the fraud. Big things happening in Minnesota. So if Shane is able to join us, it should be a good conversation. We talked for about an hour and a half earlier today. And President Trump. No Erica, no Candace. Yeah, I got nothing to say about Erica and Candace, so don't worry about that. President Trump is going to be speaking tomorrow. Full primetime address, 9 p.m. I cannot wait to see what he says. But the big news today is the full-time exposure of the Clinton crime syndicate. If you can believe it, Hillary Clinton's in the hospital, so she and Bill are not going to be able to testify as they were scheduled. James Comer has given them allegedly one more opportunity. Now, if you think about it, it is all about timing. And because they've waited, now there is a whole bunch of additional information that the Oversight Committee is probably going to want to ask them. I need to give a big shout out to Miller Biz, starting it off strong. Today's show should be awesome as usual, Zach. You are the best. We love and support you, and we love and support Donald Trump. I love you. Thank you for being here. Really do appreciate it. So do me a favor, sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn. We're about to get into it right about now. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate your patronage. If you haven't yet, please hit that like button. Help us out by sharing the show. Let me give a big shout out to Duke Nukem USA as well. Yo, RP, I sent you an email. Check after the show. Cheers, sir. I will do that. Thank you very much. And then one Ohio gal now also says, yes, what Miller Biz said. Thank you so much for that as well. I also need to give a big shout out to my good friend, Fredo. He sent us his annual Christmas smorgasbord, I guess you might say. First of all, we have a Make Christmas Great Again card from our President Donald Trump. Merry Christmas, folks. It's going to be a tremendous Christmas, the best Christmas. Believe me, we're bringing Christmas back, and it's going to be bigger and better than ever before. Enjoy your holidays, folks. You deserve it. Merry Christmas, Fredo. Thank you for that. Included in the card is a stack of Trump 2028 stickers. One of those is going straight onto my vehicle. Howard the Duck says, such a spiritual warfare going on. Appreciate you, Zach. I appreciate you as well. Thank you very much for hanging out with us today. Fredo also sent me a 1-ounce copper round. This, of course, has a Christmas theme. Says, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. It's got the nativity scene on it with baby Jesus and Mary and Joseph and the three wise men. And then on the back, there is a series of snowflakes. There is also a Merry Christmas 1-ounce silver eagle from Money Metal Exchange. Thank you so much for that as well, Fredo. Really, really cool. This is awesome. So it's a bust of Mount Rushmore with Donald Trump's face on it, and it speaks. Hold on, let's hear what it says.
Mount Rushmore will stand forever as an eternal tribute to our forefathers and to our freedom.
That's right. Beautiful. Thank you for that. And then finally, the piece de resistance. Zak Paine, Red Pill 78 socks. Lisa is going to have a fun time wearing these. I'll probably wear them as well, but I know she's going to want to steal them as soon as she sees them. And look at that. It is it's classic 2019 young Red Pill 78 before I went gray and I got old from doing the news. And, you know, another thing that Fredo does, he sends the best packages. Okay, so look, make Christmas great again with President Donald Trump's mugshot on there. That's awesome. And it looks like my good friend Shane Meckland from the Republicans in the Minnesota State House of Representatives has joined us. Let me just go ahead and bring Shane on screen here, and we can see what's going on. All right, Shane, welcome to the program. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we've got you loud and clear. So we spoke earlier today, and I said, you know what? We've been talking so much about Minnesota recently. There's just been so many stories, all of this fraud, and I figured that you would be the man to have on to the show and just get a little bit of a sort of on-the-ground feel as to what's going on. Now, as I was saying in the introduction, you've been in the House of Representatives since 2019. Were you in politics before you ran for the State House?
No.
Okay, so you were
not even a little bit.
Not even.
I mean, so no. Okay. To be fair, I never run for anything prior to that, but I did start paying attention because of what was going on in small business and as a contractor.
Yeah.
And going, okay, so I can sit and yell at these people, or I can go do something about it. And so I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years prior to that, 2018 election cycle, I started attending meetings. It was probably more than a 12-step process at that point, because politics is beyond that. And so that, whatever, I made this decision. I went for it. Didn't really know what I was doing, but figured it all out. And 7 years later, here we are.
All right. So you've been front and center for the entirety of the Walz administration.
Correct.
So you have seen the slow, steady decline of the state of Minnesota. I understand there were problems before, but Tim Walz obviously kicked it into overdrive. What is the sense on the ground from not only your colleagues in the State House, but your constituents? I would imagine are probably even more important. I mean, what do they feel about all of this news about the fraud that's been coming out, the community that seems to be largely committing the fraud? Although, to be fair, there's a fair amount of just average Minnesotans, it seems, that are also engaging in fraud. I don't know who their politics are. I don't know what ideologies they subscribe to, but it just seems like a smorgasbord. Like somebody recognized that the cap was off on fraud in the state of Minnesota, and they just went for it, whole cloth.
Well, I mean, there's always a certain extent of fraud within anything. I mean, I've known people, back in the day, what you're trying to get at as the Somali community.
Yeah.
But even prior to their, they started coming here in 91, I believe, the year. And then there was a huge increase in 96. And then under Obama, there was another big wave, if you will. But, prior to that, I mean, we all knew about people who took advantage or cheated the system, if you will. But it's on a scale now that, and don't take my smile as that I'm condoning it by any means. It's to the point where it's almost hysterical, because nobody's done anything about it. No matter what we say, they just say, well, you're racist, you're Islamophobe, you're all this different whatever, and the accusations that come back in the rhetoric is only enable this even further. And, initially, I think it's Joseph Thompson, who was the Biden-appointed U.S. attorney, that was the one prosecuting the Feeding Our Future fraud, which was the more current thing, which this actually started back in prior to 2018 under the previous governor's administration, which was Governor Dayton, under CCAP, which CCAP stands for Child Care Assistance Program. And that was riddled with fraud as well. But it all kept getting swept under the rug. Nobody would talk about it. We would raise the question or raise the issue, even in 2019 and on, but they didn't want to address it, or they didn't want to touch it, because it was largely the same community. And whether it's that they didn't want to be seen as a racist, or if that was their issue, or they needed that voting block, I don't know. That's something that they have internal conversations about. But now it's so big, they can't. There's no magic carpet out there anymore that can cover this pile of dirt to sweep it under the rug. It doesn't exist anymore. And it's very clear that when you look at the magnitude of those that have been indicted, convicted, awaiting sentencing, those that have been sentenced, I mean, it's within the bigger scheme of the numbers. It's largely one block of people. And and I'm not trying to paint them with a broad brush. It's not my point. But when you have that much fraud, which it's interesting because now, Joseph Thompson, the acting U.S. attorney, he put a press release out, an interview a month and a half, whatever it was, that they're easily at $1 billion and maybe north of there. Well, now they're saying $8 billion.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is only out of one state. And ironically, Governor Walz, in 2023, when they had control of everything, the Democrats did. They had the governor's office, they had the House, and they had the Senate. Not only did they blow a $21 billion surplus, which I know you hear a lot about 18 or 19 billion, that was only because the Democrats passed a bill early in session that took the surplus and accounted for inflation, which is what took it from 21 billion down to the 18 billion.
Okay.
But it's still $21 billion sitting in the bank of taxpayer money. So they blew all of that, and then they raised taxes another 10 billion, which is basically what it would look like to pretty much cover the fraud.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I agree with you. Not all of the people in the Somali community are scammers, but it does seem that it's endemic throughout the community, that unfortunately there seems to be not only an organized effort to commit fraud, but and there's an educational component. I mean, somebody is teaching these people to do this. I showed a clip from a Somali gentleman the other day, and I don't know what tribe he was from or what part of Somalia, but he said that when he came to the United States, the first thing that he did was, go talk to the people who are already established. And the advice they gave to him was, go get on welfare, get yourself an EBT card, get Section 8 housing, and then you'll be fine. And he was like, well, I came here to go to school. I came here to integrate into American society. I came here to essentially achieve the American dream. And they were like, stop. What are you talking about? You're going to ruin it for the rest of us. Now, the really unfortunate thing here, Shane, is that this guy is the exception, it seems. I mean, you don't have many people from the Somali community that seem to be willing to come forward and say, like, I have a real problem with this. And so it does paint that broad brush. It makes it appear as if the vast majority of the people in the Somali community are perfectly content to engage in this type of organized graft against the American people. And it doesn't help any additionally when you see the people who are willing to speak and they're out there yelling things like, we own your country. Have you seen the clips of people suggesting that Minnesota was promised to the Somali people 3,000 years ago? Apparently it's in the Bible. It's not in my version of the Bible. I haven't been able to find that myself, even when they quote the actual verse in Genesis. But it really does seem like it is very widespread.
And interesting enough, when they made that claim, when that started circulating around, I'm not going to pretend to be a Quran expert by any means, but I've even asked some of them, going, is there anywhere in the Quran that it says that Minnesota was given to them 3,000 years ago? It's actually quite absurd. So was it the Native Americans back then that gave it to Somalis?
Yeah.
Or like, none of this makes any sense. The one thing that's has happened in the last, like, probably 4 weeks, where this is really, really amped up, as it seems there's many people within that community that feel to be on the defense, and they're speaking out, and not always in the best way, because they're not doing themselves favors. And I think the guy you were talking about that came here and said he was told, you got to go on Section 8. I think he came here at 29, and he's actually fluent English. He doesn't even have an accent. And yet there's divides within the tribes, internally within their part, and Tim Walz is somewhere caught in the middle of this whole thing, and he's trying to figure out where he fits into it. As we talked earlier today on the phone, Tim Walz did a press conference, an executive order today, and it's kind of an anti-gun, anti-2A thing, and Second Amendment kind of stuff. It's a little mishy-mashy what he's doing. He's creating a commission or something that's going to advise the state, going to advise the Department of Commerce, which controls insurance, that the insurance companies are required now going forward to have a full blanket the register of whatever firearms are in the home in order to insure them and to charge accordingly. But literally, it would be creating a registry. And because what I think he's doing is he's deflecting. And he's trying to change the narrative because everything is fraud right now. It's fraud, fraud, fraud everywhere. And Minnesota has become so known for this, and it's nationwide. I mean, I told you when we were on the phone earlier, like in the last couple of weeks, I've had so many people that throughout the nation that I may have not talked to in a year and a half, and all of a sudden they're calling, going like, "What the heck is going on in Minnesota?"
Yeah.
And it's such a common thing. And then in Governor Walz, and he just by his own language, he's a knucklehead. And I think it was a week ago Sunday, he was on Meet the Press, and he said people were driving by my house saying the R word. So, which is kind of ironic on a couple sides. Number one, the R word, which is referring to as retard.
Yeah.
So if you have a classic car, which look at his campaign commercial that he put out this year, because he's going to run again for governor, which is unprecedented. No governor in Minnesota's ever had a third term, but he's got his old Bronco in there, right? That old Bronco has the old, spark plug system and timing and all that. So you either advance the timing or you retard the timing. So as a mechanic now, do we got to say, well, you need to advance it or you got to R it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever. Then on top of that, since when was it his house? Because he lives in the governor's mansion. He pays no property tax. And he doesn't pay the tax. Like literally this year, statewide, real estate taxes went up $1 billion across the entire state because of unfunded mandates he forced on counties, which actually, quite frankly, politically is brilliant because the counties all take the heat from the constituents. And as best they can, they try to explain, well, it wasn't us, it was the governor, but sometimes he can't even get that far. But nevertheless, he pays none of it because he owns no real estate in the state. He has nowhere to go. And I've actually been told today that he's asked multiple people to be his lieutenant governor candidate, and as of yet, nobody's accepted. And he's asked over 10.
Wow. I mean, I can't imagine anybody would want to hitch their boat to that ship. I mean, he's going to go down. Let me ask you this. Are you going to be supporting Mike Lindell for the Republican candidate?
Well, so Minnesota has, every state has their own way of doing things. We have an endorsement process that happens in March. Whoever comes out of that obviously has a hand up, if you will, because that's the delegates. That's the ones that stay involved year round. They're always there. And, but there's several Republican gubernatorial candidates that said they're not going to abide by the endorsement. They're going to go to the primary. The problem with our state is the primary is in August. Well, that doesn't give you a whole lot of runway to the general election at that point. So we're going to have a whole bunch of Republican candidates spending money against themselves rather than the other party. And I don't know how this is all going to work out. There was a straw poll done at the state central convention on Saturday. Kendall Kowals had 93, Lisa Dameth had 90, and then it tapers off from there. And Kendall Kowals has run twice before for different offices, whatever. Governor last time around, and then before that he ran for Congress. Lisa Dameth is the current Speaker of the House. And has been all year. And prior to that, she was the minority leader until we got into this weird thing where we're equally divided, which the last time it's ever happened was 1979. So it's the only other time it happened. And which is kind of interesting. But I've told them all, like, hey, you all fight it out. You're all good people. And well, I should say, I have not talked to Mike since he announced, but either way, those that were, all the rest of them that have asked, just you all do your thing. I don't need to make enemies.
Sure. Makes sense.
At the end of the day, what I need is one of them to win, and then let's giddy up and get stuff done.
Okay. Well, that's very sensible. I can totally understand that. So did you see that both USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins and Education Secretary Linda McMahon, both members of President Trump's cabinet, have sent formal requests to Tim Walz asking him to resign? It's tantamount to the administration asking Tim Walz to resign. I'm just wondering if that's filtered down yet.
Well, so there's even some of our own members that are saying like Tim Walz should resign, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of go, why are we asking for that?
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of gift wrapping if he's going to stay in the race, right?
Like, okay, so he has nowhere to go. He has no property here. Allegedly, I've been told, some people speculate that he's got either land or maybe something in South Dakota, which I wouldn't be surprised by because the previous governor has a palatial estate apparently in South Dakota because they don't have to pay taxes that way. So they put all the taxes on the people in Minnesota, which is really ironic. So the previous governor is Governor Dayton. For those that don't know, that name Dayton, Dayton Hudson, which was a big name back in the higher end, kind of the Macy's back in the day, which then Dayton Hudson Corporation then created a company you all have heard of called Target.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but they all have all their money in South Dakota in a trust. So it's all it's tax protected, it's sheltered, and or whatever they call it. But I would find it really ironic if Walz had property over there too. So tax the living crap out of the people in Minnesota and then flee to a tax-free state. And so you don't have to pay your fair share.
Yeah.
Because all that we are here is the wealthy got to pay their fair share. And there's one member in our caucus who sits literally 2 seats to my right, and that came up either this year, I think it was this year. One of the Democrats got up and said the wealthy got to pay their fair share. And this guy's been there for quite a while in the House, but he's also a pretty successful guy apparently. I don't know to what level, and he bellered out, no microphone, just bellered out, "Why do you hate me so much?" And it was one of the funniest things. So it's like, why is it you say you got to pay your fair share, but then you take your wealth and you flee to a tax sheltered state?
Yeah,
it's just an amazing thing.
It is pretty amazing, especially for the governor to be doing that. I mean, a succession of governors to be doing that. All right. So, what is the prevailing thought about the administration sending emissaries of Treasury and HUD, and I would imagine as many agencies as they possibly can to investigate the fraud? Because what Tim Walz was given an ultimatum: either get to the bottom of this and fix it, or we're going to come in and we're going to fix it for you. I don't think anybody has any confidence in Tim Walz to be able to look into this. I don't think that he has the will because, again, going back to the community. Well, let me ask you this first before I go to this question. Do you think it is possible for Tim Walz or any of the Democrats to continue to remain in power in Minnesota if the Somali voting bloc remains?
Okay, that's kind of a double negative. That there's factions of the Somali voting group
Mm-hmm.
that are very frustrated by how they're all being painted by a broad brush,
Mm-hmm.
because some of them they're from different parts of the African Horn. There's Somaliland and there's Somalia.
Mm-hmm.
And Somaliland is a law and order country. Somalia is apparently what they are. Based on whatever people say. And so there's people that are small from Somali descent, or that part of the region of the country, that are frustrated because they're being pulled into this negative light. They don't want to be. It's kind of like the guy you talked about. I think he came in, it was either 29 or 39, and incredibly well spoken. I mean, clearly English. And they're all being pulled into this, and they want to like not be caught up in this whole thing. It's kind of guilt by association.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody's doing anything about it. The Attorney General Keith Ellis is not doing anything about it. Ilhan Omar is actually inflaming those things, and she keeps double downing on it. And what I do hear is that one of the there's an area in northern Minneapolis area, north part of Minneapolis. It's called Cedar Riverside. It's like it's a two high rises, and it's 100% Somali, I believe, at this point. And there's multiple tribes though, and they're all kind of fighting back and forth, trying to figure this out. But since this whole thing has really started, and in Trump's rhetoric that he's put out there, calling them trash or garbage or whatever, which has emboldened them to come out and become more emboldened and saying things that I never thought I would hear him say, but saying, none of you can win a statewide race without our vote.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're becoming more emboldened. And this is where I often look at like Trump's statements going, okay, I probably would have said that a little bit different, but then look at what happens, because he creates a moment where they go into defense, which you're never winning when you're on defense.
Right.
And some of them are like really coming out pretty hard. And especially, it usually brings out the guilty ones, if you will, because they're trying to protect themselves. So we'll see where this all goes. And I do know there's a lot of federal people here throughout the state looking at all the, whether it's the housing assistance, whether it's the autism scam, whether it's the Feeding Our Future, whether it's, the CCAP stuff, the Child Care Assistance Program, like and now not only that, the SBA people are here because of all the stuff that happened under the PPP stuff. So there's a lot of attention here right now.
Okay. So I have a lot of faith in the administration. I think that there's a great will, not only among them, but also among the rest of America. Everybody is looking at Minnesota because they're like, how is it possible, number one, that this could get as bad as it did? It appears that the people in power have allowed it to slide because they are dependent upon this voting bloc. And let's break it up. So obviously, large Somali population in Minnesota. Not everybody is a scammer, but the people who are scamming appear to be loyal to those who are allowing them to scam. So let's say that that's Tim Walz, that's Keith Ellison, that's Ilhan Omar, and they're going to stick with that as long as they think that they can continue to get away with it. Hopefully those people get sent back. Hopefully those people get busted. And the people who do want to assimilate and become part of the American fabric, they're going to stick around and they'll continue to do things the right way. But I'm hoping that these various actions that are taking place are going to result in prosecutions, that'll result in perhaps even charges for those top three that I mentioned there. And then we can get back to a sense of normalcy, and everybody isn't going to be paying for an entire population of people to just come here and live off the backs of the American taxpayer. All right. Is there anything else that you want to tell us about what's going on in Minnesota before we transition to the next section of the show?
Oh, okay. But obviously Minnesota's been the highlight of this whole thing, right? But we saw that there was the guy that was in Iowa, a president of some school or something, but he was actually registered in, I think it was Maine.
Yes.
I believe. But then he went, I don't know. So you have all that. Then you have all the stuff going on in Dearborn, Michigan. If you think it's only happening in Minnesota.
Oh, yeah. And
if you think $8 billion sounds like I think people are desensitized to what a billion means. Because they just keep using numbers, and it doesn't mean anything to anybody. Okay, so what would an extra 50 grand a year mean to you?
Yeah.
And how many 50 grands are there in a billion? People do the math. And these people that have come here, it is, I'm not saying it's only Somalians by any means, but people have come and learned how to manipulate the system. And they can literally put a person on a plane with a suitcase with $1 million in it. I ask anybody that's watching this, when was the last time you seen $1 million cash right in front of you? Because I never have.
Never.
I don't know that I've even never seen 100 grand cash, like bundled up cash in front of me on a table.
No, I certainly never have. Certainly never have. And to your point, you're absolutely right. We're tracking the fraud not only in Minnesota, just focusing on Minnesota because you're here, but also in Ohio, obviously California, Maine is another hot spot. So yeah, it is a big problem, and it's endemic in certain immigrant communities around the country. And then because it's happening and people are able to get away with it, fraud just seems to be something that a lot of people are willing to do, because up until this point, there's been nothing to hold them accountable. And I don't care where you're from. I want people to go to jail.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Let's put it in this perspective. If you're less than an honorable elected person, whatever, you just want to keep moving up, whatever the case may be. You don't really care about representing the people or the Constitution or what have you. So you allow something to happen, let's just say $1 million. They get 600,000, 400,000 goes to wherever you care about. Cost of doing business.
Mm-hmm.
They got 400,000 that nobody knows about, right?
Yep.
And I'm not saying like I look at all this and going like, what's the grift here, or how are they working this? I don't know. But you look at all the stuff in California, all the, what was it, $25, $50 billion to cure homelessness, and it only got worse.
Yeah.
So where did all the money go? It went to NPOs, NGOs, nonprofit organizations, and non-governmental organizations. And so all this money went to friends, and nothing actually hit the people that were adversely affected. So I don't know. I find it to be really, really interesting. But what I do see is there's a scramble going on. There is clearly a significant scramble where they're all trying to do CYA.
Yep.
If you will. And actually, we talked about this on the phone earlier. So for those that don't know, during this Feeding Our Future fraud, different court trials that were going on, there was a big one. Oh, good Lord. I don't know, 7-8 months ago, 9 months ago, whatever it was. And somebody dropped off a bag of money, like a grocery bag, like a paper bag, with 120,000 cash in it. And to bribe the juror, and it basically, apparently the note that was in there, or however it was communicated, was if you make this go away, there'll be another bag. Well, what just came out in court proceedings last week, I think it was, when that bag left with the person that was designated to deliver it to the juror, it started with $200,000, but the courier took 80 grand off the top. We should say courier, but the person that was designated to deliver this, she takes 80 grand off the top and then just leaves the juror with 120, which luckily the juror said, "Ooh, I don't want any part of this."
Probably shouldn't.
And then she reported it. But somewhere, like, okay, where are all these bags of cash? Because I don't know about you, Zach, but I don't have cash, grocery bags full of cash just laying around to, do this, do that.
Not at all.
200 here, 200 there.
It's insane. It is absolutely insane. And one final comment here from Rumble before we let you go. Patrick D35 says, consider this interesting fact. If you were to spend $50,000 every single day, it would take you over 54 years to spend $1 billion. That is fascinating. The idea. I mean, it is a tremendous amount of money. I don't know. I've never seen $50,000 all at once. I've never seen 100,000. I've never seen $1 million. I can't even imagine. So carrying around a bag of $200,000 and just casually taking 80 grand off the top to make a jury verdict go away. It's insane. All right. Well, Shane, thank you very much for calling in, brother. I really do appreciate you, and continue to let me know what's happening there in Minnesota.
No, thanks, Zach.
All right, brother. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
All right. Let us jump into the other news about Minnesota. Thank you again to Shane Mecklin. So as Shane was saying, Governor Tim Walz signed 2 executive orders today. Both of them are aimed at reducing gun violence in Minnesota. These are not going to reduce gun violence, and they seem to be largely in response to what took place at Brown University and at Bondi Beach. Now, these orders are to expand outreach and education around extreme risk protection orders and safe gun storage. That second one is what Shane was referencing, that safe gun storage aspect is essentially going to create a gun registry, because if you own a home in the state of Minnesota, you have to get the home insured. You then have to disclose to the insurance company exactly how many guns you have in the home, exactly how they are going to be locked up and kept safe inside your private residence. And then they're going to use that data to research the federal government, they are saying as well, to allegedly claim that this is now also a public health crisis, and they are going to attack the idea of gun violence as if it is a public health crisis. It's very funny because all of the public health crises, so to speak, that they've had in Minnesota, they have just continued to throw more and more money at. Nothing gets resolved. They just need more money. And at the end of the day, nothing is going to change other than the fact that law-abiding citizens in the state of Minnesota, if this is allowed to stand, they will simply have fewer rights when it comes to the Second Amendment. Now, let me also play you this brief clip from Caroline Leavitt. Oops, I forgot to turn my camera back on. Let me play this brief clip for you from Caroline Leavitt. She is discussing President Trump's 9 p.m. prime time address, which will be tomorrow. Let's get into this short clip.
First of all, as you all saw on Truth Social, President Trump is going to be giving a joint address an address to the nation, not a joint address, an address to the nation tomorrow night, live from the White House here, 9 o'clock Eastern. I know you guys will all be tuning in. It's going to be a really good speech. I was just in the Oval Office with the president discussing it. He's going to talk a lot about the accomplishments over the past 11 months, all that he's done to bring our country back to greatness, and all he continues to plan to do to continue delivering for the American people over the next 3 years.
All right, so it sounds like it's going to just be a sort of rundown of everything that President Trump has achieved in the last year. I can only imagine that he's going to slip in some things related to current events, so I look forward to seeing what that's going to be about. Now, let me also show you this letter real quickly that I mentioned from Secretary Brooke Rollins, where she is directly demanding his resignation. I have to say, I agree with Shane on this. If we're going to win the governor's race in the state of Minnesota, assuming the elections are not fake and gay by the time the election takes place, then I think Governor Tim Walz is the perfect candidate, in the same way that I said that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as running mates were the perfect candidates to go up against President Trump in 2024, because they are just both so supremely dumb. And with everything that Governor Walz has had, I forgot to share your show. Oh my gosh. You're absolutely right. I forgot to hit post. I just shared it right now. Thank you very much for letting me know. So with all of the scandals and all of the fraud that's being detected, Governor Walz, Shane had told me something else, that Governor Walz was the reason it took him so long to announce that he was going to run for governor is because he knew that this fraud was coming out, and he had been shopping around to get a new job. So he was basically going to his NGOs and different government organizations and saying, if I don't run for governor, will you give me a position here so that I can continue to pay my bills? Because I guess his wife has a big spending habit. Apparently, he was not successful. And the only reason he's running for governor is because Tim Walz has no job prospects outside of this. So although I find it hilarious and interesting that both Brooke Rollins and Secretary McMahon are asking for Governor Walz to resign his position as governor, I hope that he doesn't. And I can only hope that during the course of this campaign, Governor Walz gets some indictments coming his way from the federal government, because as she details here, highly publicized and ongoing fraud is taking place in the state of Minnesota, and as Shane so succinctly pointed out, in many other places throughout the country. But it is affecting the federal funds that the government is giving to the state of Minnesota. Feeding Our Future is just one of them. Of course, Secretary Rollins is going to address issues that are coming directly from her portion of the government. The food and nutrition services, the child nutrition program, the SNAP program, and she also mentions that in lieu of his ability to take this fraud and nip it in the bud, what they're going to be doing is asking for the state of Minnesota to begin adhering to the following conditions. Otherwise, they're not going to give the state of Minnesota any more money. So what they need is recertifications within 30 days of the receipt of this letter of all SNAP households in Hennepin, Ramsey, Washington, and Wright counties. If I'm not mistaken, those are the counties that have the highest population density of Somali migrants in the state of Minnesota. Condition 2, as part of the recertification process, they must ensure that SNAP households in Hennepin, Ramsey, Washington, and Wright counties meet all eligibility requirements for SNAP, including by accounting for the income and resources of any excluded household members, conducting in-person interviews, and using federal eligibility tools like the improved cost-free systemic alien verification for entitlements SAVE program database. This is undoubtedly going to get a lot of people off of these programs. Number 3, upon review of the information obtained during the recertification process, make determinations as to eligibility of SNAP benefits for each SNAP household in Hennepin, Ramsey, Washington, Wright, and unenroll any ineligible households. This is probably going to piss off a lot of people who have, up until this point, been highly successful in receiving these benefits when they were not eligible to do so. Number 4, that's going to definitely cause chaos in the streets of Minnesota. Document and preserve all the information relied upon to demonstrate compliance with this pilot project and completion of accurate recertifications of eligibility. This includes, but is not limited to, all documentation pertaining to any excluded household members and recertification determinations. MDCYF must also preserve all documentation it relied upon for the immediately prior certification period related to the SNAP households in question. So they want to see the documentation for the recertification, and they want to see the prior certification so that they can compare the evidence coming from the individuals that are currently receiving SNAP and are trying to continue receiving SNAP. And if people gave fraudulent information, then obviously that can be used to file charges against them. Or if they are recipients of a special immigration status, then perhaps it can be used to just get them out of the country as a whole. Failure to participate in this pilot project, as specified by USDA, will trigger non-compliance procedures codified in 7 U.S.C. 2020. It may affect Minnesota's continued participation in SNAP. So Minnesota may lose the ability to continue receiving SNAP funds to dole out. That is wonderful news. Looking forward to seeing how that plays out. And here is the letter from Secretary of Education Linda McMahon asking Tim Walz to resign. She says the integrity of America's federalist system, where governance is a partnership between national and state authorities, it only works if state leaders uphold justice and common sense. When states abuse their authority to oversee free and fair elections, enforce criminal law, or distribute entitlements and other public benefits, the system of states' rights and liberties, that relationship of trust, falls apart. You have been Minnesota's governor since 2019, and during that time, your careless lack of oversight and abuse of the welfare system has attracted fraudsters from all around the world, especially from Somalia, to establish a beachhead of criminality in our country. As President Trump put it, you have turned Minnesota into a fraudulent hub of money laundering activity. At the beginning of this year, the U.S. Department of Education became aware that fraudulent college applications, especially concentrated in Minnesota, were gaming the federal post-secondary education system to collect money that was intended for young Americans to help them afford college. Fascinating. When Linda McMahon mentioned this the other day, she never specified a particular state where the fraud that she and the others at the Education Department had discovered was coming from anywhere in particular. She kind of made it sound as if this was nationwide, but it appears that once again, we have yet another source of fraud that has been identified in the state of Minnesota. We call these fraudsters ghost students because they were not ID verified and often did not live in the United States, or they simply don't exist. In Minnesota, 1,834 ghost students were found to have received $12.5 million in taxpayer-funded grants and loans. They collected checks from the federal government, shared a small portion of the money with the college, and pocketed the rest without attending the college at all. To stop these ghost students, we at the Department of Education implemented enhanced fraud controls, such as mandatory identity verification for certain first-time student applicants. Our new fraud prevention system has now blocked more than $1 billion in attempted financial aid theft by fraudsters, including coordinated international fraud rings and AI bots pretending to be students. Even one of your state's top elected officials, Congressman Ilhan Omar, has sought to take advantage of the federal taxpayer by advocating for broad student debt cancellation, which she has publicly acknowledged will benefit her directly. She borrowed tens of thousands of dollars to attend college as a politics major that she now does not think she has to repay, despite her generous taxpayer-funded salary. My colleagues in other federal departments have uncovered the massive scandal of welfare fraud in Minnesota, where you have done absolutely nothing as governor to stop this criminal behavior. Scammers have gotten rich off federal housing, education, food stamps, small business programs, even defrauding assistance for elder care and autistic children. Joining these criminals in their schemes have been Minnesota politicians who benefit both in votes and donations from the fraudsters' support, like the radical Islamic terror groups overseas who receive Minnesota money to kill American service members. Minnesota's political elite has turned a blind eye and even helped facilitate the laundering of money that was meant to help America's least fortunate. Shame on you, Governor Walz, for allowing this to happen and for benefiting from it. Stop defrauding American taxpayers. No politician is above the law, and my department, alongside every other agency under the leadership of President Trump, will continue to ensure that you will not be able to dodge accountability for your actions. Given your dereliction of the office entrusted to you by Minnesotans, I implore you to resign and make way for more capable leadership. I certainly appreciate the sentiment, but like I said, I don't think Tim Walz should resign because I think that his candidacy is great for us, essentially. Now, take a look at this. The Minnesota DHS department, this is the account that is run by whistleblowers who for years have been attempting to blow the whistle on this systemic fraud taking place throughout all of these various programs. They say, guess who was responsible for feeding our future programs at DHS and DCYF? None other than the famously incompetent Tim Walz's personal favorite, Tiki Brown. Public records reporting shows that Minnesota DHS submitted incorrect SNAP information to the federal government across multiple reporting periods. What internal controls failed, and why hasn't there been a formal independent review of leadership oversight? Errors in federal program reporting matter when they occur repeatedly. Best practice is administrative review and corrective action. Has the governor's office initiated any leadership reviews related to SNAP reporting errors? The answer is no. Frontline staff are routinely held accountable for compliance errors. What accountability standards apply when systemic reporting failures occur at the agency or leadership level? Oversight should not minimize risk. How is the state auditor evaluating DHS's repeated SNAP reporting inaccuracies, and what criteria determine when further investigation is warranted? Well, as I was saying in my conversation with Shane, anytime it's going to impact their voting base, it would appear that politicians in Minnesota, bureaucrats in Minnesota, choose to do nothing about it. Repeated SNAP reporting errors raise governance questions. Who reviewed the data before submission? What corrective actions are now in place? The answer is none and none. And now that Secretary Rollins has implemented the new reporting verification check guidelines, there is going to be a massive, massive difference in the data that is collected versus the data that has been used in the past. The only thing that can result from this is charges for those who were responsible for those, quote, reporting errors. It's not necessarily a reporting error. It is more like a reporting deficit for the benefit of those fraudsters. Now, I had mentioned also that it's not just Somalians. Take a look at this. The former CEO of the Minneapolis Regional Chamber of Commerce is also pleading guilty to embezzling hundreds of thousands of dollars. He created a fake company, created a fake founder, and this was all done to cover his tracks. He also created a fake death, and he even published a fake obituary. His name is Joseph Weinhagen, and he's just been charged in Minnesota federal court. Let's take a listen.
The former CEO of the Minneapolis Regional Chamber of Commerce is pleading guilty to embezzling hundreds of thousands of dollars. Jonathan Weinhagen is charged in Minnesota federal court, and the details are crazy. According to the indictment, Weinhagen made up a fake person and company, James Sullivan of Synergy Partners, in order to funnel money to himself, which he allegedly used on things like a trip to Hawaii. When others in the chamber got suspicious, Weinhagen allegedly told them James Sullivan died, even creating a fake obituary to prove it. On top of that, Weinhagen is accused of clawing back money the chamber donated to Crime Stoppers to help solve the murders of Minneapolis and spending that money on himself. Check in the comments for more details on the plea deal. I'm Lou Ragoose. Follow for more news.
So
the former CEO...
This guy was not a politician, but he was a business leader. And certainly the Chamber of Commerce is directly connected to politics because they have a vast amount of power that they wield. They control companies. They control the direction that money flows. And obviously, they're going to be working with politicians on a regular basis. So this was a fairly brazen type of fraud that this gentleman was engaging in. And I got to hand it to him. You got to give him credit for the dedication to the grift. Jonathan Weinhagen producing a fake company with a fake CEO and even creating a fake death with a fake obituary. The fake person that he created was James Sullivan. He allegedly died on March 28th, 2024 after a 9-month battle with pancreatic cancer. That is dedication to the fraud. Oh, my goodness. All right. Now, we also got a report this week from Ilhan Omar that ICE had pulled over her son on the streets of Minneapolis. The only problem is that ICE definitely keeps track of that stuff. And the Trump administration has responded and said, yeah, that shit never happened. So she had said that on Sunday during an interview with a local news outlet that ICE agents had pulled over her son and demanded that he produce documentation to prove he was a U.S. citizen. He pulled out his passport. I don't know a lot of people that travel with their passport rather than just a driver's license, but allegedly, the ICE agents saw his passport and they let him go. She said yesterday after he made a stop at Target, he did get pulled over by ICE agents, and once he was able to produce his passport ID, they let him go. She also claimed that immigration agents had previously entered a mosque attended by her son, but the agents left without incident. Well, the Department of Homeland Security responded to Omar on X, and they said, ICE has absolutely zero record of its officers or agents pulling over Congresswoman Omar's son. With no evidence, it is shameful that Congresswoman Omar would level accusations to demonize ICE as part of a PR stunt. Allegations that ICE agents engage in racial profiling are disgusting, reckless, and categorically false. What makes someone a target for immigration enforcement is if they are illegally in the United States of America, not their skin color, not their race, not their ethnicity. Under the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, DHS law enforcement uses reasonable suspicion to make arrests. Now, we are all hoping that Ilhan Omar may very soon face potential prosecution for immigration fraud for the fraudulent marriage to her brother, for the multiple marriages between her brother and the guy that was her husband. You know, one thing to also note is that Ilhan Omar cheated on her real husband with this white guy that she's now married to. And if Ilhan Omar goes back to Somalia, that's the kind of thing the Muslims would stone a woman for. So even if she has tens of millions of dollars in some unnamed Swiss bank account, or she's got it held in a Kenyan trust fund or something like that, Ilhan Omar is not out of the woods, and I can't wait to see her be deported. Now, here is something else that I did not get a chance to report on, but Shane told me about earlier. Ilhan Omar became a citizen, a naturalized citizen of the United States as a result of her father becoming a naturalized citizen. Now, they all used fake names. She may not even be the daughter of the man who is supposed to be her father, but you only get your naturalized citizenship when your parents receive their citizenship if you are a minor. However, Ilhan Omar's date of birth, as it was publicly listed on her campaign page, on her page in the House, on her literature that was all over the place, showed that when her father became a naturalized U.S. citizen, she was actually 18 years old. So she didn't actually qualify to receive her citizenship. So once that was reported, it means that immediately that right there is an immigration violation. So what did she do? Well, she and others who controlled these websites immediately went and gave her birth date and a bump. Okay, so they changed her birth date to make her actually, on paper, have been 17. But, you know, that doesn't actually jive with the information that was out there before. So I can only imagine that Tom Homan has this information. Whoever is investigating Ilhan Omar has this information. The reason she was protected prior to this is because Ilhan Omar was protected by the highest levels of the Democrat and deep state machine. It's quite clear that her ascendancy to power, to elected office, came at the request of someone else. She is like the female Barack Hussein Obama, in my opinion, except only now she is being exposed before she can get any higher in the annals of politics. Now, I am going to go back to this interview a little bit later in the show, but this is relevant to what Shane was talking about. I didn't realize that there was a Somaliland, which was a country, and then there's actually a Somalia that's a country. But apparently the people are ethnically indistinguishable. They have the same physical features. Now, this woman, Sonia, is her name, maybe not even her real name, but she is from Somaliland, and she would be part of that tribe that does not jive with Ilhan Omar. She explained secretly, because she didn't want her face and her name to be known because she would then be essentially in danger in the local community. She said that people like her from Somaliland are not surprised about the massive fraud going on in Minnesota. They do not like Ilhan Omar, and apparently they are not participants in the fraud. She said, "We saw it coming because we used to wonder, why are people not talking about this?" Now, Sonia also had some choice words for Ilhan Omar, who is, of course, facing a lot of scrutiny now after all of the scams that she herself has been involved in. She said, "Ilhan Omar is someone that I know isn't telling the American people the truth. Omar has lied to the American people. She scapegoats the people who call her out for her ineffectiveness, because I haven't seen Ilhan Omar demanding accountability in Minnesota. She's pointing fingers. She's calling everybody a racist and an Islamophobe. So to me, Omar is a fraud, and I'm hoping that justice knocks on her door very soon, as am I." All right. Now, another case that Shane told me about, we actually reported on this when it actually happened, on or about October 9th of 2024 in Sherburne, Minnesota. A Somali man, came in to vote early. His name was Tajir Rage, and Tajir Rage came in, he voted early, and then he came back later in the day, and the same clerk was working. Only this time, he gave a different name, and he attempted to vote again. Well, the clerk, being on the lookout for this type of thing, called the sheriff in Sherburne County. The sheriff came down, and they spoke with this man. Turns out he had a list of some 200 names, and he had planned to just go into as many different locations as possible and vote on behalf of these people. Certainly, there was a exchange of money. He said that he had been paid to go ahead and behave in this manner and to commit this election fraud. And then, of course, I would imagine that the people who were registered to vote and then put on the list were also receiving a smaller cut of what had happened. Now, what's really interesting is that this case was just adjudicated on the 12th. Instead of being charged with election fraud, which is a federal crime, and instead of actually getting what he deserved, he pled guilty to two much lesser charges. So the prosecuting attorney for the state of Minnesota that was actually bringing this to court ended up allowing him to plead guilty to giving a false name, birth date, or ID card to a police officer, and that's a misdemeanor, punishable by 90 days in jail or a $1,000 fine. Probably didn't get either. And then he also pled guilty to driving without a license. Driving without a license. Now, that's essentially nothing. What they also determined during the course of this investigation is that this man not only had one ID with the name Tajir Rage, but he actually had a second ID in the name of Abdi Mahad. So now the question is, which one of these is his real name? Shane was telling me earlier that this appears to be very common in the Somali community, where they will have one name and then they will have another name, but they will have IDs for both. And then they will also have registered to vote in both. So this is a case that I think really needs to be looked at the federal level because it is a perfect racketeering case. There is an organized element to this. Someone gave this man the directive to go in there. Someone collected those 200 names. Someone assisted him in getting multiple IDs in different names with the exact same face. And somebody is paying everybody who is involved in this. I will give you one guess as to which party is benefiting from this in the state of Minnesota. Of course, it's the Democrats. That's why I really wanted to know if Shane thought that the Democrats could even continue to win if it wasn't for the Somalians who were engaging in the fraud. Now, let me also, I forgot to show you guys, I got this from Fredo as well. It is a Donald Trump soft drink koozie. You might call it a beer koozie, but I don't drink beer. So there you go. Love the Donald Trump hair. Thanks again, Fredo, for the care package. I really do appreciate it. Yeah, Keith Ellison is definitely getting his money's worth out of this. All right, now let's jump over to Brown University. So the FBI has now released new images of the person of interest. Let's go ahead and just jump straight to the new data. We've got, oh no, this is actually what we saw yesterday. There was another image that I saw on X, which was actually pretty high quality. And I want to say it was 0 Hour who had it on their account. 0 Hour. Let me go to him. There we go. 0 Hour 1. And let's see. That's not it. Okay, so, well, these are very small images that they've released, but that's him walking in the background. It's also been determined that the entrance that this individual would have used, there's a freaking high-def camera that's right there, which is like a 360 camera, and would have undoubtedly captured a picture of the individual coming through. Now, here is a couple of more new images. I don't know who that is. Some crackhead. There is also a number of people of interest which have been identified, people of Palestinian descent who attend this university, who have now, after being identified, scrubbed their accounts from the internet, which, of course, means that people can't look into them. First of all, the one that I saw, was Mustafa Karbouche. This individual is a former UN advocacy and research intern. He works for something called the Crisis Group. He is a he, and he's also an anthropology student there at Brown University. He appears to be the 5'8", which the shooter was identified. He's kind of a portly individual. His information has now been removed from the Center for Middle Eastern Affairs at Brown University. It was there earlier today, but once he was identified as a person of interest by sleuths on the internet, he, of course, was taken down. Now, there is also a report that a black student was in the room when the shooter came in. This young man right here, the shooter looked him dead in the eyes and then moved past him, and he went on to shoot the two young students that ended up being the victims in this case. So here is another new video. This is interesting, too, because, we don't know what he's looking at. There's a person walking back there. It's almost like he's looking to communicate with that person or somebody else that might be around the corner. But a lot of people were saying that this action of holding your hands behind your back it's not a classic American stance, not the kind of thing, Americans. I mean, I put my hands in my pocket if I need to do something with my hands, clasping them behind my back. That's, you're exposing your torso and your chest, and somebody could attack you. Let's see. What else was there on here? I think that was the only new stuff that came out. But yeah, definitely interesting that, here is another picture of Mustafa right here. It looks like he's wearing earrings. So maybe he's like one of those gays for Palestine. I don't know. Shooter might have been waiting for a specific person before the attack. Well, I think that sounds like, investigative move number one. Here is another picture of Mustafa, not saying he's the shooter, but he appears to have all of the features and hallmarks of the individual who has been identified as the shooter. Let me also show you right here, refreshing this, considering that this individual is a Palestinian and part of the Center for Middle Eastern Affairs. We now have confirmation from multiple people that the shooter shouted out Allahu Akbar
police did
prior to actually pulling the trigger. So this is Caroline Wren. She's a reporter who was on War Room earlier today. Take a listen.
press conference yesterday, and they would not confirm what the shooter yelled out before he started shooting. So you had a room of 60 students, 11 which have been shot, 2 are now dead, but that means that there are, at least, they said somewhere around 60, 40 students who are in there who could confirm what this man shot. At least 5 students that I've seen have confirmed on the record in media interviews saying that he yelled Allahu Akbar. Well, I think that that's pretty relative information. I think that that would matter as there's a massive search for the shooter. Did he yell Allahu Akbar? Because then we should be looking for a, free Palestine terrorist. And Reddit yesterday, by the way, had to shut down the Brown University board because Free Palestine students were celebrating Ella Cook's death.
Ooh, that is damning right there. Celebrating the death of that poor young woman. All right, now, take a look here. Speculation is swirling after the Brown University scrubs the Free Palestine activist Mustafa Karbouk from their webpage. Other people's profiles are listed normally on Brown's Center for Middle East Studies page, but Karbouk is page not found. It still shows up in Google search results. That is highly suspicious that Brown would be attempting to scrub this guy. Now, it stands right along with the theory that whomever it was that committed this killing of these 2 innocent young students, the university does not want the truth to come out because, of course, it does not fit the narrative that they would like to be able to tell people. So this right here is the archived version of the webpage at the Center for Middle Eastern Studies at Brown University. And you can see all of the information about him. It was there until earlier today when he was identified by 0 Hour. Now it is currently unavailable. There are several pictures available in the Google search results. All of them go to a dead end when you attempt to go to the university's webpage. Now, the DHS has just announced that many violent criminal illegal aliens have been caught in Minnesota during the course of these latest operations. Over 400 illegal aliens, including convicted pedophiles, rapists, violent offenders. The criticism for Governor Walz and Mayor Jacob Frey of Minneapolis is, of course, coming as well, because these are the people that the Democrat politicians in the state of Minnesota are protecting. Operation Metro Surge has led to a crackdown on many different individuals who have no business being on the streets, including a 47-year-old criminal illegal alien from Burma. He had already been convicted of third-degree criminal sexual conduct. He used force of coercion in Nobles County. He was already sentenced to 4 years in prison and 10 years of probation, and he's had a final order of removal since February 27th of 2014. Bon du Lassane. And then here we have another 59-year-old criminal illegal alien from Laos. He was convicted on 2 counts of rape in Columbus, Ohio, sentenced to 7 years in prison. Final order of removal back on December 17th of 2009. Another 52-year-old criminal illegal alien from Laos convicted of 4th-degree criminal sexual conduct using force or coercion in Roseau County. How do you say that? Is Freya and boys here? Roseau County. He was sentenced to 18 months in prison and 10 years of probation. He was ordered removed on March 30th of 2004. Another 43-year-old criminal illegal from Somalia convicted of robbery in Columbus, Ohio. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison, and they told him to get the hell out back in May of 2011. Another 42-year-old from Laos, criminal illegal convicted of first-degree criminal sexual conduct with a child under 13. His final order of removal was back in October of 2006. Yet another 50-year-old criminal illegal alien from Laos convicted of first-degree great bodily harm, sentenced to 14 years and 7 months, third-degree sexual conduct, and sentenced to 18 months. Sexual intercourse with a child in California, sentenced to only 210 days. False imprisonment in California, sentenced to 1 year and 4 months. His final order of removal was 25 years ago, October of 2000. We have another 49-year-old criminal illegal from Mexico. He was arrested for soliciting children through electronic communication. Of course, he was looking to engage in sexual conduct, and he was convicted of hiring or agreeing to hire a child under 16 years of age for prostitution. He was only sentenced to 75 days in jail and 75 days of work release. No final order of removal on him that we know of. However, he will no longer be allowed in the country. We have another 63-year-old illegal criminal from Laos. He was convicted of third-degree criminal sexual conduct and second-degree sexual assault with a dangerous weapon. Just a reminder, every time you see leftists on the street yelling at ICE agents and telling them to get the hell out, or telling the residents of apartment complexes not to come outside because ICE is present conducting raids, these are generally the people that they are there to arrest. And these are the people that they are protecting. The leftists are protecting. This man was sentenced to a total of 8 years and 6 months for those crimes, and his final order of removal was 24 years ago, May of 2001. We have another 26-year-old criminal illegal alien from Ecuador. He was convicted of robbery in Columbus, Ohio, sentenced to 3 years in prison. He was also arrested for DUI, assaulting an officer, obstructing the legal process, and disarming a peace officer. Here is a 51-year-old criminal illegal from Mexico, convicted of third-degree sexual assault with the intent to cause physical injury in New York and driving while impaired in Minnesota. His final order of removal was February of 2010. That order was reinstated in May of 2012 and again in November of 2020. So DHS wants everybody to know that Operation Metro Surge is working, and we continue to find the people who should not be roaming the streets. We've also arrested 223 illegal aliens once more in the Indiana highway operation. Now, of those 223, 146 were driving trucks. You can see here we have people from all over the world. These are 3 driver's licenses issued by Illinois, California, and New York State. And these 223 criminal illegal aliens were all arrested along Indiana highways near the Illinois border. 146 of them being truck drivers, meaning that likely they probably could not read English. This was conducted in Northwest Indiana as part of the Chicago-based Operation Midway Blitz. They were looking for people engaging in driving under the influence, drug trafficking, burglary, assault, child abuse, domestic battery, prostitution, and fraud. More than 40 of those arrested had been issued commercial driver's licenses, primarily from Illinois, California, and New York. So these operations by ICE were conducted alongside officers from multiple states, including New York, where they were detaining drivers holding valid commercial licenses that were issued by other states. Federal and state officials have said these operations are intended to address the various very obvious public safety risks that we have when illegal aliens are operating commercial vehicles and engaging in activities which result in fatal crashes and the deaths of American citizens. So these coordinated efforts across the entire United States are highly necessary, but even more so in these sanctuary jurisdictions. The actions which led to this enforcement followed federal audits that identified widespread fraud in the CDL industry and improper issuance practices throughout multiple states. We've spoken about all of them. Federal officials estimate there may be as many as 130,000 undocumented truck drivers operating right now on the roads in the United States, and tens of thousands are believed to have obtained licenses through illegitimate means. We want to withhold highway funding from any states who fail to comply with federal audits, who fail to revoke these licenses that have been issued under questionable circumstances. Sean Duffy from the Transportation Administration has warned that New York is standing to lose $73 million in federal highway funding if they do not address this issue by producing an audit within 30 days. Similar funding threats have already been issued in California. They look at losing $160 million, Texas, $182 in Minnesota, $30 million. The New York Department of Motor Vehicles has already rejected the allegations. They said that they comply with federal requirements and they verify their lawful status using federally issued documents. Doesn't mean that these people are providing documents that are legitimate. State officials characterize the funding threat as merely a political action and saying that it does not improve road safety. California, for their part, have filed a lawsuit against the federal government. They have already revoked 17,000 improperly issued licenses, but as we know, there are many more in the state of California to revoke. Federal audits have already found that 53% of sampled non-domiciled commercial driver's licenses in the state of New York alone were all issued illegally. 25% of the 145 non-domiciled licenses reviewed in California since June were all improperly issued, and additional audits identified improper issuance practices in Colorado, Pennsylvania, South Dakota, Texas, and Washington. So this issue is a problem all across the United States. It's not simply the states that you would automatically expect. But between 2000 and 2021, the number of foreign-born truck drivers more than doubled. It rose from 316,000 to more than 720,000. Think about how many American truck drivers were taken out of the labor pool as a result of nearly 1 million foreigners being allowed to enter our country and drive on our roads when, not only were they stealing jobs from Americans, which in my opinion is unforgivable, but they were also doing so and putting American lives at risk. It's a miracle that more people are not dead. So continue to do these operations around the country, and we will only see an increase in people being arrested. Before we continue, I have a brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. Thank you very much to everybody for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button. If you, like me, are still scrambling for Christmas gifts for the people that you love, there are maybe going to be some problems because shipping deadlines might have already passed. So what are you going to do? You're going to be in a world of hurt. I've got a lifeline for you. Chicago Steak Company. You can head on over to mychicagosteak.com/rumble and use that code rumble because that's going to get you a special deal because they are still shipping for Christmas. And the best part is shipping is 100% free. You got to hurry. Those slots are filling up fast. Give your loved ones the gift of the top 2% of beef in America. USDA Prime and Premium Angus, hand cut by master butchers. Marbling so good it hits that hot pan and it fills the whole house with that characteristic smell. You know what I'm saying? That buttery meat goodness. It is delectable. You can spend $229 right now, and they will send a special deal along with it. 6 free ribeyes, plus you're going to get that free shipping I mentioned. That's $240 in premium steak on the house for Christmas. Your gift shows up in a black and gold box. It's packed with dry ice. Your loved one cracks it open. The vapor rolls out, an instant Christmas morning feel. Skip the sweaters, give them something that they're actually going to remember and that they're going to enjoy putting in their belly. mychicagosteak.com/rumble. Once again, the code is rumble, RUMBLE. You can use the QR code on screen. Make sure you spend $229 with the code rumble to get free shipping, and 6 free ribeyes. Thank you very much to them. All right, and continuing, let me actually give a couple of thank yous to our friends over here on Pill. Thank you so much for the generous support, my friends. Thank you to Seanjo for 1, 2, 3, 4 cookies. Thank you to Ming65, who says, thanks, Zach. Thank you. No Thanks Joe says, as always, Lisa and Zach, thanks for bringing your great reports every day. They really help me stay in the loop, even though many accuse me of being the loopiest. God bless, be safe. We will never accuse you of being the loopiest here, my friend. Thank you for that. Hogleg71, thank you for the cookie. Judy the Lady Pug, thank you for the cookie. Ina says thank you. Prayers and America. Love you, Ina. Thank you for that. Sean Joe, thank you for 2 cookies. Filter Dog says 300 gold pills. Is this the 300th episode? I don't know. Is it the 300th episode? No, I've done way more than 300 episodes, but either way, thank you for that. Sean Joe, thank you for 2 cookies as well. All right. Another story about an illegal alien. This time, it's an F around and find out kind of story. This illegal alien was just sentenced to 20 years in prison for violently assaulting and choking an ICE agent. This is an illegal migrant from the nation of Mexico. Diego Barón Esquivel violently assaulted an ICE agent in Kansas earlier this year. Well, Baron Esquivel is not in Kansas anymore. He's now been sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. That is the maximum penalty allowed under this statute. During this violent attack, Baron Esquivel choked out the agent. Now, in the press release from the Department of Homeland Security, this took place on February 28th, 2025. 2 ICE officers were conducting a targeted enforcement operation to arrest this criminal illegal alien. He is a violent criminal illegal alien. He had been consistently harassing his former spouse. His extensive violent criminal history includes arrests for multiple counts of domestic battery, multiple counts of violation of a protection order, criminal damage to property, aggravated robbery, felony theft, transporting an open container, criminal restraint, possession of drug paraphernalia, and improper use of an automobile. Now, of course, Baron Esquivel resisted his arrest. He violently punched one of the ICE officers in the face and the head. That escalated to strangling the officer with his own badge cord. Now, the officer almost passed out before he successfully broke the badge cord. Baron Esquivel fled the arrest, but was later successfully apprehended by local law enforcement. Assistant DHS Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said this barbaric criminal illegal alien with a rap sheet a mile long violently punched one of our officers in the face and head and then began strangling the officer with his own badge cord. Our officers are facing a 1,150% increase in violence against them as they arrest the worst of the worst. He is now in prison for the next 20 years, and Secretary Noem has been crystal clear on this point. If you lay a hand on law enforcement, you will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I personally am waiting to see American citizens who are engaging in this type of behavior. I want to see people like that locked up because I want there to be a clear message sent. There is a major difference between protest, nonviolent, and within your constitutional rights, and physically impeding the activities of a federal law enforcement official who are simply trying to keep you, your family, and your community safe. I want to see people going to prison for breaking the law because as it stands right now, not that many people seem to get in trouble when there are a lot who should be going. Like Kat Abagazala, you remember her? She's that broad from Illinois who is right now running for the Illinois State House. I don't know how successful she's going to be, but what a delicious dessert would it be if she ran, if she actually won, and then they sent her to prison. I would really enjoy that. All right. Now, do you remember the fraud taking place in Maine? I'm sure you do. We now have a whistleblower who has come forward publicly because he worked at a Somali-run NGO in Maine. Let's listen to everything he discovered.
I thought that we were doing the right thing this whole time. And the more I started digging, the more I started finding. And I just couldn't believe what I was seeing, that this was happening and that I was part of this.
Chris Bernardini spent 7 years working for Gateway Community Services, a Somali American-led health services contractor in Maine. Bernardini alleges Gateway oversaw a system in which false records were filed about client visits, and he says they charged taxpayers for providing services that were never performed.
We started getting some clients calling and saying, months later that their client owed them hours. They hadn't come in for these shifts and stuff. But I had a time card for it.
And then they were billing for it.
They were billing for it.
In March of 2022, Gateway received a notice of violation from the state's Maine Care Services Program Integrity Unit based on an audit of records taken at random from January 2017 through December of 2018. Gateway overbilled by an estimated $904,000.
In your professional opinion, what you saw was fraud.
Absolute.
No doubt about it.
No doubt about it.
But Bernardini says when the pandemic hit, it got worse.
I started seeing bonuses, $2,000 bonuses going to these staff that had only been with us for 2 weeks, never worked a shift with a client. And yet the PPP loan comes, you're giving $2,000 away like they're lollipops at a doctor's office.
In April of 2024, Bernardini wrote to the Department of Homeland Security seeking whistleblower protection. They referred him back to the state of Maine. Nearly a year later, Gateway fired Bernardini. The company's founder and CEO is Abdullahi Ali, a Somali American who, while at the time serving as executive director for Gateway, last year ran for president of Jubaland, a state in Somalia's south that borders Kenya. Last week, he posted on X, "I make no apologies for building a successful business in Maine, working hard to earn a living, earning my PhD, giving back to my Maine community, and running for office in Jubaland. I am proud to contribute my hard-earned dollars to support my people back home." We reached out to Ali for comment multiple times. We even came to Gateway to try and speak with him.
Hello. I'm with News Nation. My name is...
Look at her.
No comment?
No
Is
comment.
Mr. Ali here? Can we speak with Mr. Ali?
Republican State Senator Matt Harrington has called on Governor Janet Mills to investigate.
It's just an absolute insult to the Maine taxpayer that we know that there's this Medicaid fraud going on by Gateway Community Services. We're seeing nothing from the Mills administration on this, and I think it's appalling.
I still can't believe it. I still can't believe I took so much of my time and put so much of my life into this agency that just tossed me aside. It's caused me to reflect a lot and, try to trust my gut more and speak up more when I see something.
He should have a whistleblower protection lawsuit that he would be able to file against this company, because you're not allowed to retaliate against whistleblowers. Like, that's a crime in and of itself. Now, I also have another video that I just thought was so perfect. One of the immigrants that we are happy to welcome to the United States of America. The type of person who wants to travel here, to become part of the fabric of American life, to become an American, to assimilate, to enjoy the promise of our nation, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the last thing that this man wants to do is to take advantage of the open and loving opportunity that America affords people like him and other immigrants.
So if you are a naturalized citizen like myself, or a green card holder, but you don't have a job, you don't do anything, you become a welfare drama queen or a broke ass bum, your citizenship and immigrant status needs to be revoked and you need to be sent back, okay? Of course, if you're illegal aliens, you need to get the fuck out of here. You need to be sent back. And I am calling for Secretary Kristi Noem to look at Ilhan Omar's fake marriage certificate. So she fucking like married to her brother in order to stay in the United States. That's bullshit. I'm also begging the IRS to look into Ilhan Omar's $30 million. She got how in the fuck she got $30 million? What kind of skills does she got? What did she do? Besides being like a Somali representative. It's cool, y'all. God bless America, okay?
God bless that man. I love it. I absolutely love it. He is based AF. All right, now, would it surprise you to learn that the exact same type of Somali fraud that we are seeing here in America is occurring in other areas where Somalis are also immigrating? Probably not. Turns out that when they go to Sweden, they have a habit of doing the exact same thing. Now, it looks like the United Nations did an investigation on Somali communities in Sweden. What they discovered is that 70% of food aid was stolen. There were ghost beneficiaries, meaning they were identifying people that they needed support for who simply didn't exist. $100 million, boom, off the top, just stolen. There were fake NGOs, just like we saw in Minnesota. There were fake signatures, fake invoices, fake food, but real money, just like in Minnesota. There were fake families and fake children. This isn't just an American story. The same thing is happening in Sweden. Now, this is a Swedish MP who is blowing the lid off the problem there. She wants America to know that, hey, this is happening across every country that Somalians are immigrating to.
Hey America, while you're debating whether Ilhan Omar married her brother for citizenship and watching every question about fraud deflected as hate or racism framing, this isn't just an American story. Did you know the same thing happened in Sweden? Somali-born MPs and community leaders there were caught in schemes siphoning over 100 million from schools, welfare and public programs. In Minnesota, prosecutors say 250 million meant to feed hungry American children was stolen, the largest welfare fraud in US history. Same pattern, same community networks, same playbook, and everyone insists these are isolated incidents. So how do two countries 4,000 miles apart end up with nearly identical fraud networks led by people from the exact same place? To understand that, you have to understand Somalia. You see, Somalia hasn't had a functioning government since 1991. What filled the void? Clans, militias, warlords, and aid cartels. Aid theft isn't on the margins, it is the system. A UN investigation found diversion in all 55 displacement camps surveyed. Multiple reports documented up to 70% of food aid stolen or diverted. Investigations from 20...
Yeah, she is not Swedish. I just realized it is a Swedish MP who came out with this information, and this woman appears to have just taken the details.
10 to 23 repeatedly showed aid convoys hijacked, taxed or resold, ghost beneficiaries, fake NGOs created to siphon funds. Money doesn't flow through ministries, it flows through clans. Loyalty networks are greater than governance, and clan leaders control distribution lists, ghost beneficiaries and paperwork. Add the Hawala system. Brilliant for diaspora remittances, but perfect for untraceable money flows. Billions move outside Western oversight. This is Somalia's operating system. Survival economics built on exploitation, ghost paperwork, intimidation, and aid theft. Now drop that system into Western welfare states built on trust, self-reporting, and paperwork, and it scales. Diaspora networks recreated familiar structures. Minnesota wasn't ready for clan-based accounting. Sweden wasn't built to track Hawala-style flows. And social workers weren't trained to audit war economy fraud. Minnesota's scandal wasn't a mistake. It was a blueprint. Sweden's wasn't random. Same methods, different country, bigger budgets. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Minnesota looks identical to old UN scandals in Somalia. Ghost children, ghost beneficiaries, fake signatures, fake invoices, fake food, real money. Only difference? In Somalia, the money came from aid. In Minnesota and Sweden, it comes from taxpayers. When a survival economy built on aid theft enters welfare systems, fraud isn't accidental, it's predictable. Ilhan Omar won't tell you this because it collapses her narrative. These aren't isolated scandals, they're warnings. Failed states don't stay contained, their corruption systems travel. And if the West keeps treating this conversation as taboo, the losses won't stop at 250 million. The stakes are far bigger than most are willing to admit.
Yeah, obviously nobody told her about the $8 billion per year that's been discovered in Minnesota. Now, you extrapolate that out to the rest of the country where we have immigrant communities which are engaging in systemic fraud, And I can't even begin to imagine. We're talking perhaps trillions of dollars that has been siphoned off and put into the coffers. I mean, think about how much of the national debt alone is due to fraud and abuse of the system. And the number becomes staggering. Bendix says, more foghorn leghorn. I guarantee you by the end of the show, I will do a foghorn leghorn for you. All right, now, the son of Rob Reiner has been arrested for the murder of his parents. His arrest video was published very briefly by police in Los Angeles and then strangely taken down shortly thereafter. But what's even stranger about the situation is the night that or maybe the night before, young Nick Reiner killed his parents, he got into a public fight with his parents at Conan O'Brien's Christmas party, and everybody was very worried about Nick's mental state. The next day, he slit his parents' throats and stabbed them to death, and that very night, the Reiners were scheduled to meet with Barack and Michelle Obama. Isn't that interesting? Now, we know this because Lady boy Michelle Obama sat down with Jimmy Kimmel last night, and she said that she and Barack had plans to meet with Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle the very same night they were murdered. During her appearance, she was asked how she knew them, how long she knew the Reiners, and she said, "We've known them for many, many years. We were supposed to be seeing them that night." Let me just say this, unlike some people, Rob and Michelle are some of the most decent, courageous people you'd ever want to know. Well, Michelle Obama would say that, wouldn't she? Now, let us talk about the insane circumstances surrounding the Clintons. But before I do, let me once again say thank you to Bendix. Let me also say thank you over here on Pilled to Norwegian Wood, who says, everyone have a safe and Merry Christmas and a happy holiday season. Merry Christmas to you as well. Good Dog 45, thank you for the can. And Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie. Had he waited for would be murdered. Yes. Oh, my goodness. That's something I didn't even think about. I don't know if the Obamas were scheduled to go to the Reiners or if the Reiners were going to the Obamas. But yeah, that could have been a very different circumstance. All right. So as I said in the introduction, Bill and Hillary Clinton's depositions have been postponed once again. I think it's quite obvious that they are attempting to avoid testifying at any cost. James Comer has already said if they didn't show up for this deposition after numerous reschedules by their attorneys, that he would submit warrants for their arrest. But for some reason, James Comer has relented and allowed them to be scheduled for some time in January. Now, I believe that James Comer wants to make sure that the Clintons sit down before the Oversight Committee. I believe that he truly does want to put them under oath and ask them questions about Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, the relationships that have long been established between the Clintons and these child traffickers. The Clintons, however, do not want this to happen. Chad Pergram had reported on X, it's been more than 4 months since Bill and Hillary Clinton were subpoenaed to sit down for depositions related to this investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. This is actually James Comer speaking. Let's see, for our investigation into Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's horrific crimes. Throughout that time, the former president and former Secretary of State have delayed, obstructed, and largely ignored the committee's staff efforts to schedule their testimony. If the Clintons fail to appear for their depositions next week or schedule a date for early January, the Oversight Committee will begin contempt of Congress proceedings to hold them accountable. So it appears that they were forthcoming and scheduled this date for January. Now, this latest round of scheduling was supposed to be Bill Clinton tomorrow, December 17th, and then Hillary, his wife, following on Thursday, the 18th. But the new dates are for January 13th and 14th. Interestingly enough, that will be smack dab in the middle of the grand conspiracy grand jury that is currently convening in Florida. But one thing still hasn't changed. Comer is still threatening former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton with contempt charges if they choose not to show up in January. So your correspondence with this committee continues to ignore the committee's arguments, Comer said, misstates relevant facts, and seeks information about the committee's investigation, to which neither you nor your clients are entitled, Comer wrote in a response to the lawyers for the Clintons. Comer claimed that the attorney for the Clintons said he could not provide alternative dates for their testimonies, and so the committee is the one who selected January 13th and January 14th. Bill Clinton would be January 13th. Hillary Clinton would be January 14th. So the Clintons have nothing to do with this scheduling. Only once again, they were saying that they were not going to be able to show up for this deposition that was scheduled for this week. Now, I heard yesterday from someone in the chat that Hillary Clinton was in the hospital for an unknown condition. Wouldn't it just be the way for her to pretend that she's too sick to show up? But James Comer has once again said, if your clients do not comply with this new date, the committee will move immediately to contempt proceedings. Personally, I hope they don't show up. I want them to be arrested, and I want to see them perp walked. Even if it's only for a moment. I would really, really enjoy seeing Bill and Hillary Clinton in handcuffs by D.C. Metropolitan Police. Bowler Jack Bryan says, Merry Christmas. You are the best. Thank you so much for that $50 Rumble rant, my friend. Merry Christmas to you as well. Really, really do appreciate it. All right. Now, the next portion of this saga is a set of documents that have been handed over by the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Justice. This makes the questioning of the Clintons in January all the more interesting because, as I said, it will be in the midst of the grand conspiracy grand jury. But these new documents, which include emails from inside the FBI, it shows that the agents at the FBI during Joe Biden's tenure had doubts in their minds as to whether or not they had probable cause to raid Mar-a-Lago. During these emails, they were passing information back and forth and saying what we are being asked to do by the Department of Justice simply has not been corroborated. So in the summer of 2022, multiple people in the FBI raised repeated objections to the raiding of Donald Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago, warning agents that they did not believe the Biden Justice Department had enough evidence to establish probable cause that President Trump, then former President Trump, had broken any laws in the handling of classified documents. So from these emails, WFO, that would be FBI's Washington field office, has conducted approximately redacted interviews related to this matter. Very little has been developed related to who might be culpable for mishandling the documents. This is from a memo that the FBI released on June 1st, 2022. From the interviews, Washington field office has gathered information suggesting that there may be additional boxes, presumably of the same type as were sent back to NARA, the National Archives, in January at Mar-a-Lago. The Washington field office has been drafting a search warrant affidavit related to these potential boxes, but they have some concerns that the information is single source. It is not being corroborated and may be dated. DOJ Counterintelligence and Export Control Section opines, however, that the search warrants meet the probable cause standard. So what was happening here is Merrick Garland's DOJ, at the direction of Joe Biden and his deep state handlers, were putting pressure on the FBI, telling them that Donald Trump's personal home, Mar-a-Lago, must be raided because getting these boxes was, of course, of the utmost importance. They were aware that if President Trump was able to return to the White House, that they would be totally cooked. They had to get these documents because it provided all of the evidence necessary to indict them once Donald Trump came back to power. Over a month later, FBI agents raised concerns yet again, including about the legality of searching Trump's personal residence at Mar-a-Lago. From another memo, DOJ has inquired as to an ops plan for a search warrant at Mar-a-Lago. I let them know we are not in agreement for probable cause on the search warrant and that we already had an ops plan in place that will or can be quickly updated between FBI, Miami field office, and Washington field office. This is from a redacted FBI agent in the nation's capital in a July 12th, 2022 email. However, Washington field office does not believe we have probable cause for the 45 office or the bedroom due to recency and issues of boxes versus classified information. Therefore, as we are in disagreement on the search warrant and its scope, we are not yet finalizing a search warrant as we are missing relevant logistics and details. So this copy of these memos was given to Just the News by Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel. They were previously classified. DOJ and FBI declassified them, and they also turned them over directly to Congress. So they were handed over to Chuck Grassley and his committee. They were also handed over to James Comer and a number of others. Received shocking new docs today from the DOJ and the FBI showing the FBI did not believe they had probable cause to raid President Trump's Mar-a-Lago home, but the Biden DOJ pushed for it anyway. That is from a tweet by Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley earlier today. Based on the records, Mar-a-Lago raid was a miscarriage of justice. We already knew this, but it's good to see it written in black and white because it was memorialized prior to it happening. The emails were turned over to both the Senate and House Judiciary Committees ahead of the planned deposition of Special Counsel Jack Smith, which is taking place tomorrow. So wonderful news to know that Jack Smith will be pressed on this when he comes in. He is, of course, the individual who inherited the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case just a few months after that raid in August of 2022. I still remember where I was when that happened. Lisa and I and the kids were on the road, and I was like, I can't believe I'm not in my studio to do a video about this. It's one of the most important things that has happened in the last 10 years, if not the century. This, of course, is a something that has been rumored for a long time, that there were disagreements among FBI agents and that the decision to ultimately raid President Trump's home was done at the request of the National Archives. However, these declassified emails chronicle the very, very specific concerns that DOJ under Joe Biden had not met the standard for a search warrant, but they decided to push ahead anyways. They knew that they needed to get rid of Donald Trump and that if they were successful, nobody was ever going to find out. How would they know? How would they know? Jay Bratt was at the time the chief of the DOJ's CES, and he was a future member of Jack Smith's special counsel team. He was one of the key individuals who was pushing for this raid on Mar-a-Lago. There was another FBI email that was sent on June 2nd, and it stated, "We learned from Jay Bratt that he did not intend to negotiate with President Trump's lawyer, Evan Corcoran, or have any further discussions with him. They were looking to railroad the president and steamroll right over his legal counsel." Brett Reynolds, who was a trial attorney at CES, appeared to send a draft of a warrant on July 8th of 2022. Michael Thacker, who was an assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District of Florida, also appeared to send another draft version of another search warrant on July 13th. "We haven't generated any new facts," they said, "but we keep being given draft after draft after draft. Absent a witness coming forward with recent information about classified information on site, at what point is it fair to table this? Is it time-consuming for the team and not productive if there are no new facts supporting probable cause?" This email was sent on July 13th, 2022. "As everyone is tracking," another email stated, "WFO does not believe and has articulated to DOJ CES that we have established probable cause for the search warrant for classified documents at Mar-a-Lago." This is an email on July 20th. DOJ has opined that they do have probable cause, requesting a wide scope, including residence, office, and storage space. In Washington field office's opinion, if a primary goal of this investigation is to identify and recover classified records quickly so as to protect the information, the 6 weeks spent fixated on probable cause for a search warrant has been counterproductive. So when the raid happened, it was a flashpoint in American politics. President Trump, of course, used it in the battle between him and Joe Biden for the 2024 election. And the federal indictments that came afterwards were ultimately dismissed because it was merely a weaponized act of a dying political dynasty. The raid on Mar-a-Lago in August of 2022 was only done with the authorization of Attorney General Merrick Garland, who was, of course, handpicked by Joe Biden. And Merrick Garland also handpicked Jack Smith to lead these twin criminal investigations into the January 6th affair and then the classified documents as well. So the House Judiciary Committee had issued a subpoena compelling Smith to give closed-door deposition tomorrow as part of the committee's probe into the federal prosecutions of President Trump. That means that he will be under oath, so anything that he says could potentially put him in criminal legal jeopardy. Let me remind you, Jack Smith has already requested immunity in exchange for his testimony. We'll see how that all goes. The Committee on the Judiciary is conducting the oversight of the operations of the special counsel you led, Jack Smith, specifically your team's prosecution of President Donald J. Trump and his co-defendants, Jim Jordan wrote in his letter with the subpoena 2 weeks ago. Due to your service as special counsel, the committee believes that you possess information that is vital to the oversight of this matter. Now, Peter Koski is a lawyer for Jack Smith. He indicated that Jack Smith plans to comply. Ahead of that appearance, House Democrats are desperate, trying to force the release of a classified version of his final report on the investigation. The legal team for President Trump has currently gone to court to try to block its release. And the White House under Joe Biden also was linked to that classified documents investigation into President Trump. Special counsels are supposed to be totally operating on their own. They're not meant to have communications with the prevailing political authority at the time. They're supposed to be independent, but it's quite clear that the Justice Department did not operate alone in their communications with Jack Smith. The Biden White House was having direct communications with him as well. All those boxes of so-called classified documents, as we know, had been previously declassified by President Trump prior to him leaving the White House. And it was only because Joe Biden reclassified them that it made them something that he could be prosecuted for. But of course, again, at the end of the day, it was all a ruse. Now, it was also done in coordination with the with NARA, with the National Archives. They set a trap for President Trump, and they sought to create this situation, which would lead to his raid, his arrest, and ultimately his prosecution and imprisonment, which would stop him from being able to come back into power. Now, again, we have additional reporting simply coming from the Gateway Pundit, where they quote some reporting by Fox News. They go through the same type of information, discussing that once again, the FBI did not believe they had everything necessary to enter President Trump's residence. They had no probable cause for the warrants, and the FBI intended for the execution of the warrant to be handled in a professional, low-key manner and to be mindful of the optics of the search, one agent wrote. But of course, that didn't happen. As we know, Merrick Garland authorized the use of deadly force in the raid on Mar-a-Lago. They did wargaming and planning on what could potentially happen if Secret Service drew on the FBI agents, if they ended up getting into a firefight at Mar-a-Lago. They were totally prepared to kill President Trump and his family. They went into Barron's room. They went into Melania's underwear drawer. They were shameless in their searching of President Trump's personal residence. Alina Habba commented, saying, "Not shocking at all. This is par for the course with everything we've come to learn from the last administration, and it's one of the reasons why we need to make sure these people face justice." Now, I also mentioned earlier that the timing of Hillary Clinton's testimony before the Oversight Committee is, of course, now in a very unique position, because also coming from the FBI is additional documents related to numerous cover-ups that were done on her behalf at both the FBI and the DOJ, seeing the treatments of Hillary Clinton and the president from the same organizations at different times over the last several years is a little bit shocking, even though we've heard about all of these things over and over and over again. It's quite clear that they were looking for a reason to put President Trump in prison, and yet they had multiple reasons to put Hillary Clinton in prison, but they continued to cover for her over and over and over again. Now, federal investigators have shown that there was significant evidence that was worth pursuing related to a variety of criminality that involved the Clinton Foundation, the State Department's approval of the sale of uranium-1 to Russian state-owned interests. I can't tell you how many times I've said I sure hope that uranium-1 comes back up, because I know everything that Nate Cain gave to the federal investigators, everything that he turned over from the FBI archives. Let me tell you, many of the same people who were involved in the plots to try to take down and imprison President Trump, not just Hillary Clinton, were also involved in the uranium-1 scandal. Names that we kept hearing over and over and over again. I couldn't say them at the time. I still can't say them now because a lot of this has not been made public yet. But when it is made public, I will make sure to comment on it specifically. But every single time FBI agents came up with a reason to go after Hillary Clinton because of her obvious criminal activity, somebody at the Department of Justice or somebody at the FBI would then step in and make sure that the investigation would die. They continually took control of these investigations, pushed them off in order to ensure that the statute of limitations would run out. Now, if you guys have been following the crimes of Hillary Clinton over the years, you'll probably remember that the sale of the Canadian-based uranium-1 to Russian state-owned Rosatom was a major point of controversy, and Republicans at that time were looking at it with quite a bit of scrutiny. Not enough, in my opinion. Maybe they could have done more, but the FBI directly stonewalled them. And then when you had people like Nate Cain, who were patriotic American heroes trying to do the right thing, when they stepped forward, unfortunately, they turned it around and they went after him instead, rather than going after Hillary Clinton. But the people who saw what was going on recognized that the time when Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was working in the Obama administration, it was her who helped approve the deal. And most importantly, in terms of criminality, the Clinton Foundation benefited to a very, very great degree. Now, career agents, line prosecutors, even contractors like my friend Nate Cain, who were working at the FBI and the DOJ, also all believed that this saga was a criminal saga. This was not simply a individual making bad decisions. There were orders from DOJ leaders, people like Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates, FBI Director, Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, who explicitly demanded that agents slow walk these investigations. And then when they didn't slow walk them fast enough, they stonewalled any further investigation to the point where it could essentially no longer be pursued. There were FBI agents and DOJ prosecutors in Little Rock, Arkansas, and elsewhere who closely scrutinized the scandal. You probably remember Huber, when he took a DOJ 737 down to Little Rock, Arkansas, and took all of those records from the Clinton Foundation, and then nothing ever else arose from it. It's because of people like Andy McCabe and Sally Yates. These people who were on the trail of Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation were largely blocked from being able to engage in serious investigations due to the active betrayal of leadership like Sally Yates and Andrew McCabe. And then once those delays were put into place, the arguments about the statute of limitations had run out. The only problem is for Hillary Clinton, once again, racketeering has no statute of limitations, and based upon the number of crimes that Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation are directly involved in, I think that it is entirely plausible to imagine that the modern-day incarnation of the FBI and the DOJ could set about making a case for racketeering. Hillary Clinton was the leader, in my opinion, of a global criminal cartel. And when she rose to the rank of Secretary of State and then attempted to become President of the United States of America, she would have been the most powerful individual in the world. And who knows how far her criminality could have gone. There was a man by the name of Jonathan Ross. He is a first assistant U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia back in 2018. He argued in an email sent in 2018 that there is no legal barrier in continuing the present investigation into the Clinton Foundation and Uranium One. Ross has served as U.S. attorney in Arkansas since 2022, including during Trump's second term. Then, U.S. Attorney Cody Highland of Arkansas also sent a 2018 email to U.S. Attorney John Huber of Utah, largely summarizing Ross's arguments, stressing, "We do not believe the prosecution is time-barred by statute of limitations, in part because payments from the subjects of the investigation to the foundation were made continuously from 2007 to 2014. Well, we also have newly declassified internal FBI investigative timelines that have been revealed by Kash Patel. They also argued claims that the statute of limitations had run out on the Uranium One inquiry failed to include whether acts of concealment, such as deleting her emails in 2015 and making additional statements and representations about those deletions, would have extended the statute of limitations, also pointing to possible federal criminal statutes, such as the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act. The actions that she was taking were commissions of major frauds against the United States of America, also bank fraud, also a ton of other crimes that you can probably imagine just by sitting down for 15 minutes and looking at the timeline of Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation's criminal actions. That timeline also argued that 18 U.S. Code 3287, Wartime Suspension of Statute of Limitations Act, should have extended the statute of limitations for this alleged criminality as well. Isn't it frustrating to see just how deeply they were invested in this criminal investigation into Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation? And they were right there. They had it in their hands. They could have brought charges against her. They could have put her in prison for the rest of her life. But because of deep state bad actors in the most just the most opportune positions of power, they were able to stop these investigations from going forward. So I am begging the DOJ right now, take action. These criminal actions that Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation have taken should not be ignored. I hope that these are things that Hillary Clinton will be asked when she comes to sit for her deposition in mid-January. Now, these new files about the Clinton investigation were also handed over to Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley, and he made the records produced to him by FBI Director Kash Patel and Attorney General Pam Bondi available to Just the News over the weekend. So if you don't know, Uranium One was a Canadian company. They mined uranium around the world. They had assets all over the place, Eurasia, Africa, and North America. But they had facilities here in the United States, in Wyoming, Utah, and a number of other states. But it approximately accounted for 20% of the U.S. uranium capacity at the time. Now, one of Nate's primary contentions about the deal was that when it was offered for sale to Rosatom, the Russian company, this required a review of the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, also known as CFIUS. They would be the one who would need to approve an acquisition of a company of this strategic importance by a Russian state-backed company. Now, Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State at that time. She actually sat on that committee. She had a prominent role in shaping the foreign policy that was the front and center portion of the Obama administration. So Uranium One shareholders poured millions of dollars into the Clinton Foundation just prior to the approval that was made by CFIUS. Again, Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, sitting on the CFIUS committee, making the decision about whether or not the sale would be made to Rosatom, and she and her foundation directly profited from these millions of dollars that were poured in by shareholders in Uranium One. Nevertheless, this investigation petered out due to delays from the people at the very top of the food chain and internal debates inside the FBI as to whether or not the statute of limitations had expired. Man, people People are so frustrating. The Clinton Foundation has been asked for comment. They have, of course, declined to comment. Now, once the investigation had been delayed for a year or so and then dragged on past the 2016 election, the 2016 election was another excuse that they gave, that Hillary Clinton was running for president, so therefore we can't bring an investigation against her during this time. Obviously, they had no problem doing that for President Trump when he was running for election. But the timeline provided by the FBI shows that the DOJ officials under President Trump then began to raise their own concerns regarding the statute of limitations around this investigation into the Clinton Foundation and the ongoing saga that was known as Uranium One. Ross would argue that claims related to the statute of limitations running out were flawed. Substantial evidence existed to investigate. We needed to do this. The timeline stated that the field office for the FBI in New York initiated a preliminary investigation in January 22nd, the January of 22, rather. This must have been January 22nd of 2016 or 2017. The Little Rock field office initiated a full field investigation on January 27th, and the Washington field office initiated a preliminary investigation on January 29th, 2016. The Clinton Foundation's intersection with the Uranium One saga was part of the investigative mix from the start. It's not that they didn't see it. It's not that there's a bunch of stupid people working at the FBI. There were good investigative agents that were working. They saw exactly what was happening. They probably knew about Nate Kane's disclosures and the things that he found at the FBI when he was working there. But the people above them stopped them from being able to do anything about it. So, FBI in Little Rock submits a case opening request for a full field investigation into the Clinton-Frank Giustra Enterprise Partnership, the Clinton-Giustra Sustainable Growth Initiative, Uranium One Americas, Frank Giustra himself, and Ian Telfer. From the timeline, it stated in late November 2016, the criminal chief at that time, James Gatta, advised the Eastern District of New York that there were some concerns regarding the statute of limitations. While then, U.S. Attorney Robert Capers said the case could have statute of limitations issues and that Capers wanted to close this chapter and move forward. You know what, guys? It's just not worth it. We're just going to move on and just get it over with. So then, First Assistant U.S. Attorney Patrick Harris, at the end of January 2018, sends another email to the entire investigative team and U.S. Attorney Hyland indicating, in his opinion, we've deemed to be faulty. The statute of limitations for the entire investigation ends on February 2nd of 2018. So Hyland sends an email in June of 2018 to U.S. Attorney Huber, providing an update on the Clinton Foundation investigation and saying that Jonathan, presumably Jonathan Ross, put much of this together for you. The email said that the Bureau has 17 302s, those are the interview sheets, and 9 intelligence summaries, and said that the majority of the existing 302s pertain directly to components of the Uranium One investigation. So the prosecutor said the team did not believe the statute of limitations had run out. They stressed that the last act in the furtherance of a conspiracy is the date from which a statute of limitations commences to run, not the date from which a public official resigned or left their office. I would be less than forthcoming if I didn't convey my belief that our local agents continue to have an issue concerning their confidence in their authority to investigate the matter due to an email message containing a flawed statute of limitations opinion from a man they have worked with for years and years, Hyland wrote. The email was sent January 30th, 2018, and has cast a permanent pall over the local agents' attitude towards the very investigation they fought so hard to reinitiate after being shut down in January of 2016. Hyland continued saying there are remaining investigative tasks that should be completed before making a final assessment of the Uranium One matter. And this includes potential interviews with Frank Giustra, Ian Telfer, redacted, maybe Secretary Clinton, the foreign nationals, specifically identified by another redacted name, as having made statements concerning their attempts to use the foundation as a vehicle to influence the Secretary of State. the career official at the State Department that Undersecretary Fernandez communicated with prior to voting to approve that transaction, that would be for Uranium One, officials at the Department of Energy that approved the export authorization for the tracking firm owned and operated by Rosatom after CFIUS approved of the acquisition. The prosecutor also argued that the intelligence summary regarding Uranium One fails to account for the dynamic related to possible deliberately false statements that may have been made by officials to CFIUS to induce the authorization to sell Uranium One to Rosatom because Rosatom could not export uranium, or that was the claim that they were making. It's time to make significant movement on this matter if it is to be properly and effectively run to ground, especially as it relates to wrapping up the Uranium One investigative tasks. Now, Ross writes another message in September of 2018, where he argues, I believe the agents here have a depressed morale issue concerning their confidence in their authority to investigate this matter due to the email sent by First Assistant U.S. Attorney Patrick Harris that he sent to the investigative team at the end of January 2018. Thursday, February 1st, will be 5 years since Clinton resigned at State. I believe the statute of limitations has expired and the investigation of Uranium One CFIUS has expired, as we're assuming that the statute would extend until she was no longer Secretary of State. Ross quoted Harris as having said this on January 30th, 2018. I think after February 1st, 2018, we have no evidence to suggest we have jurisdiction to investigate matters that occurred more than 5 years ago, and we should not be using redacted. Don't know what that is. If there are interviews to conduct, so be it, but I haven't seen the evidence to suggest another crime. I know there may be allegations of pay to play involving the foundation, but I haven't seen the evidence that gets us out of the statute of limitations problem in as much as Clinton resigned on February 1st of 2013. Ross said that redacted is simply wrong in his assessment concerning how statute of limitations impact this investigation. I have met with redacted and asked him if he was aware of 18 U.S.C. 3287 when he drafted that email. His answer was no, I've never heard of it. Ross also wrote, I believe, due to their long-term relationship with redacted and their high confidence in his opinions, the agents here in Little Rock continue to have some question in the back of their minds that suppresses their impetus to run this investigation to the ground. He also argued that the FBI must allocate some additional agent support, perhaps even completely reassign this matter to a separate team of investigators, and contended that the unique dynamics of how this case has been handled in our office by the previous management team and the significant caseload of our office is such that I don't have confidence in the ability of our existing staff to support this investigation. Further, complicating our needs for resources is that the standard go-to for such support on public corruption cases is the Public Integrity Unit at Maine Justice, the unit that has now been shut down. But as we have previously discussed, there appear to be conflicts of interest for the leadership there related to the 2016 investigations that undermine any confidence we might normally have in looking to them for assistance. So the Obama administration penned this new 123 agreement with the Kremlin. This was designed to increase cooperation on civil nuclear energy and further commercial opportunities between us and Russia. This is a deal that led to billions of dollars in contracts for the United States utilities here to buy Russian uranium to power their nuclear reactors. Russia's state-controlled nuclear company, Rosatom, was also making moves to corner the global supply at the exact same time. And their company's efforts to acquire the Canadian company Uranium One became a big scandal for the Obama administration because it basically saw the total elimination of U.S. domestic production of uranium, and it raised corruption concerns about some of the chief officials. The acquisition was a scandal that plagued Clinton during her 2016 presidential campaign. There was a great book done by investigative author Peter Schweitzer, and his own institute, the Government Accountability Institute, found that there were 9 Uranium One shareholders who funneled $145 million into the Clinton Foundation before the deal was set to be considered and was ultimately passed off as something that the United States should allow. It was approved. And the team that the Hillary Clinton was working with repeatedly denied that she had a major role in approving the sale. even though she was part of CFIUS. It was reported back in 2015 that the Russians gradually assumed control of Uranium One in 3 separate transactions from 2009 to 2013. A flow of cash made its way to the Clinton Foundation. The chairman of Uranium One used his family foundation to make 4 donations totaling $2.35 million. Those contributions were not publicly disclosed by Hillary or Bill Clinton, despite an agreement that Mrs. Clinton had struck with the Obama White House to publicly identify all donors, and other people with ties to the company made donations to Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation as well. Shortly after the Russians announced their intention to acquire this majority stake in Uranium One, Bill Clinton, you may remember, received $500,000 for a speech in Moscow. It was paid for by a Russian investment bank which had ties to the Kremlin, and they were also promoting Uranium One stock. At the time, we had both Rosatom and the United States government making promises that were intended to ease any concerns about ceding control of the assets of this company to the Russians, but those promises have all been broken. In 2017, it was reported that before the Obama administration approved this controversial deal, giving Moscow a big swath of control over American uranium, the FBI had gathered substantial evidence to show that Russian nuclear industry officials were engaged in all kinds of crimes, including bribery, kickbacks, extortion, money laundering. All of it was designed to grow Russia's atomic energy business inside the United States. Federal agents used a confidential witness who must have been redacted in those emails that we just went over. He was working inside the Russian nuclear industry to gather extensive financial records. He made secret recordings, intercepted emails going back to as early as 2009. But all of it that he was able to gather and hand over to American authorities showed that Moscow had compromised an American uranium trucking firm. They were paying them bribes and kickbacks, and that is a violation of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. That should have been enough right there to stop this deal dead in its tracks. They also obtained an eyewitness account, along with documents indicating Russian nuclear officials had routed millions of dollars into the U.S. designed to benefit some very particular individuals. That would be former President Bill Clinton's charitable foundation, and that charitable foundation was, of course, also at that time Hillary Clinton's, and she was acting as Secretary of State in Barack Hussein Obama's administration. This is not something that ever should have been allowed to happen, but Hillary Clinton had a tremendous amount of power, and Barack Hussein Obama himself is a criminal as well. Now, in a letter penned by Senator John Barrasso, Republican from Wyoming, back in December of 2010, he wrote Barack Obama, and he said that this transaction would give the Russian government control over a sizable portion of uranium capacity here in the United States of America. At that time, the chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, he said that in order to export uranium from the United States, Uranium One would need to apply for and obtain a specific NRC licensing authorization to export uranium for use in nuclear fuel. Chuck Grassley, he wrote a letter to Attorney General Loretta Lynch in June of 2015. He contended during critical stages of the acquisition and approval process, interested parties made large donations in the millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. Loretta Lynch also did her part in stopping any further investigations into Hillary Clinton. She protected her in the same way that everybody else did. But Chuck Grassley said, in light of the gravity of the decision to allow a Russian takeover of almost a quarter of our U.S. uranium assets, it's in the public interest to determine the facts and circumstances of this transaction, including any possible donations that may have influenced the CFIUS review process. Yes, honey, what is this? Your chats aren't scrolling. Okay, let me see what's going on. Foxhole chat. Okay. Let me see. Rumble chat. Oh, it's not scrolling because there is something blocking the chat. Okay, I just fixed it. Let me say Trumpet. Oh, gosh, several donations that I haven't seen yet. First of all, Trisha says, I see her doing this again. I'll go ahead and pull that up in a minute. Thank you, Trisha. Good to see you. Also, thank you to Bearable, who says, I want to wish you and Lisa a Merry Christmas. Bearable, I love you. Thank you so much for that $50 Rumble rant. Trumpet says, truly the best evening news feed ever. Merry Christmas and God bless you. Thank you so much, my friend. Really appreciate you. Jim Kyle says, Zach, has there ever been a truly deep dive on Trump University? I mean, I'm sure people have. I'm just not interested in it because it's not around anymore. And the reason Trump University isn't around is because they just wanted to impugn the character of President Trump. MAMFC says, Merry Christmas, you are the best, with a $100 Rumble rant. Oh, thank you so much. That is very, very kind of you. I certainly appreciate it. All right. Now, before I continue on this story, I have a brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, get ready, fight fans. On December 20th, the biggest crossover boxing event of the year takes place live from Dubai, only on Rumble Premium. It's Misfits Mania, the fight before Christmas. It's going to be headlined by Andrew Tate, stepping into the ring against heavyweight champion Chase Dumour for Misfits Boxing's heavyweight title. This isn't just another bout, it's a global event with a stacked undercard and an all-out action set that you can't miss. Tune in exclusively on Rumble Premium and witness drama, power, and one of the most talked about clashes of the year. So mark your calendars, December 20th, because Misfits Mania is about to deliver fireworks. Sign up today. You can use that QR code right there. You can also use the code FIGHT on Rumble Premium. Thank you very much to them, and thank you very much, everybody, for the generous donations. I really appreciate it. Let me very briefly pull up this video from Trisha.
We were misled that there were supposedly protests and then something sprang out of that, an assault sprang out of that. And that was easily ascertained that that was not the fact. And the American people could have known that within days, and they didn't know that.
With all due respect, the fact is we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make?
Oh, she is so incredibly clueless. All right. So, the GOP-led inquiry from the House Intelligence Committee back in 2017, they looked into this. Virtually every single investigative body that looked into this found that there was a problem. We have been talking about Uranium One for years on this channel, but again, nothing happened. Attorney General Jeff Sessions had U.S. Attorney John Huber of Utah review the allegations related to Uranium One and the Clinton Foundation, but he never made Huber a special counsel. Then you had Assistant Attorney General Stephen Boyd send a letter to the GOP-led House Judiciary Committee in 2017 in response to a series of letters in which you and other members request the appointment of a special counsel to investigate various matters, including the sale of Uranium One, alleged unlawful dealings related to the Clinton Foundation, and other matters. Sessions then forwarded that letter to Huber, told the federal prosecutor, I've requested that you review the matters referenced, but the letter avoided any matters being looked at by then special counsel Robert Mueller. Hyland then met in mid-August of 2019 with DOJ officials at the Public Integrity Unit, which is really the cover-up of Public Integrity Unit, to discuss the need for additional resources to support the Clinton Foundation investigation, or alternatively, closing the case as a result of insufficient resources and remaining time under the statute of limitations. There was a leak to the Washington Post in January 2020, indicating that Huber was winding down his efforts in January 2020. It was also reported by Fox News in September of 2020 that aspects of Huber's investigation into Clinton Foundation had then been assumed by U.S. Attorney John Durham as part of his review of the Russia probe. I think that if anything happens in this instance, this Uranium One investigation will be rolled into the grand conspiracy. Special Counsel John Durham's 2023 Special Counsel report said that his appointment order by Attorney General Barr did not include the Uranium One saga within its scope, with Durham report stating that we have not interpreted this order as directing us to consider matters addressed by the United States Attorney for the District of Utah. And it's been previously reported by many in the alternative media sector that U.S. dependence on Russian-sourced uranium was a long time in the making. It was cemented by a number of choices that were made by the Clinton and the Obama administrations. They were looking to export all of uranium from American hands and put it into the hands of a foreign power, which would, of course, place us in a weakened position and make it difficult for the United States to maintain the dominance that we had over the many years of the past. Vladimir Putin, of course, had put his own restrictions on uranium exports to the United States as a result of the war in Ukraine. This is now an issue that simply must be addressed. There is no statute of limitations on criminal conspiracies such as this. Maybe we're going to see something, especially now that all of this detailed information has been made public by the FBI and the DOJ, showing that either people were without the necessary impetus or desire to continue the investigation, or they were fundamentally misinformed about what the statute of limitations actually applies to. But it's quite clear that Hillary Clinton profited to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. She committed many crimes over the years, and I, for one, am sick and tired of not seeing people get their just desserts. There were so many instances where they were this close. As a perfect example, one of the things that was hidden from investigators was the Anthony Weiner laptop. The Anthony Weiner laptop came up in conjunction with one of these investigations, specifically out of New York. Andrew McCabe made sure that the Anthony Weiner laptop got siloed and completely buried, and that's why we never heard anything about that. I wonder if that would count as a crime on behalf of Andrew McCabe. Maybe Andrew McCabe can get his own criminal prosecution as a result. We've also had a very interesting circumstance take place inside the White House. Susie Wiles appears to have potentially shot herself directly in the foot. She is under direct fire right now because Vanity Fair published an article, which was an interview they did with her over a period of days. And some of the things she says in this interview appear to be not too flattering about President Trump, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, Pam Bondi, virtually everyone. Now, she is saying that the interview itself has taken remarks she made out of context and are, if not out of context, then fully fabricated. Now, as published by Vanity Fair, she allegedly described the president as having an alcoholic's personality, which is a very shocking thing to say because right now, well, until this article came out, Susie Wiles was considered to be the second most powerful person in Washington, D.C., based upon her proximity to the president. She also was considered to potentially be the most powerful woman in Washington, D.C., again, due to her proximity to the president. But to say that President Trump has the personality of an alcoholic, that's a shocking thing to say. I don't know anybody who has ever felt that. President Trump has never taken a drink in his life. He's always been very clear about his position on alcohol. It's also claimed by Vanity Fair that she repeatedly called J.D. Vance a conspiracy theorist who only converted to Trumpism based on pure politics rather than principle. She also, now I will say this, I have heard privately that Susie Wiles, I've heard a lot about Susie Wiles. I'm not going to say everything that I've heard, but I will say that anybody that you see out of Florida that's risen to political prominence in recent years, whether it's Ron DeSantis, the governor, Marco Rubio, Pam Bondi, Rick Scott, who's the other guy who's going to be running for governor, Byron Donalds, any of those people, Susie Wiles has been responsible for their ascendancy in terms of the political throne that they now hold. I've heard that there is a bit of a war going on between Susie Wiles and J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio. She wants Marco Rubio to be president in 2028. I don't know about President Trump, but generally speaking, whoever is vice president during a successful presidency like this is going to be the person who gets the nomination and runs. But from what I understand, Susie Wiles wants Marco Rubio, and she wants to get rid of J.D. Vance. So I'm not particularly surprised about these reported comments that she's alleged to have made. I can't verify any of this, though. But I feel like, I don't know why she did an interview with Vanity Fair in the first place. I mean, it's a left-wing publication, and any opportunity they could have to make Susie Wiles look bad, I mean, I would imagine that they would take it. Now, Vanity Fair, of course, in publishing these comments by Susie Wiles, it makes her look like she thinks everybody around her in the White House, including the president, is basically a sucker because she's the only one who knows what's going on. She was also reported to have said by Vanity Fair that the White House budget director, Russ Vought, is a right-wing zealot and that Elon Musk is a drug addict. It's also reported that she said that Pam Bondi was a moron, basically, for her mishandling of the Epstein files. I don't know anybody that's going to really argue about that one. And she supposedly also ripped on Secretary of State Marco Rubio. She called him a custodian, and that Elon Musk was, I guess, what? She ripped on Marco Rubio, calling him a custodian, and Elon Musk for shuttering of the most corrupt agency, USAID. So it sounds like Vanity Fair is saying she's upset that they shut down USAID. She is quoted in the article as saying, I think anybody that pays attention to government and has ever paid attention to USAID believed, as I did, that they do very good work. If she said any of this stuff, I can't believe that she is going to keep her job, because nobody saw USAID and the work that they were doing except for deep staters and intelligence assets and believed that they were doing good things. Wow. Susie Wiles, however, has responded on X, and she said that the article is a disingenuously framed hit piece. Let's look at this. The article published early this morning is a disingenuously framed hit piece on me and the finest president, White House staff, and cabinet in history. Significant context was disregarded, and much of what I and others said about the team and the president was left out of the story. I assume after reading this that this was done to paint an overwhelmingly chaotic and negative narrative about the president and our team. I can believe that. The truth is, the Trump White House has already accomplished more in 11 months than any other president has accomplished in 8 years, and that is due to the unmatched leadership and vision of President Trump, for whom I have been honored to work for the better part of a decade. None of this will stop our relentless pursuit of making America great again. I suppose that whatever the truth of this situation is, it will be revealed. Because if Susie Wiles said all of these things about President Trump and the people that he's chosen to be around him, he's probably not going to allow her to remain in her position. Now, J.D. Vance is such a class act. I really like this guy. He was asked about Susie Wiles' statements and specifically calling him a conspiracy theorist. And let me play for you what he said.
Vice President Jacob Bogage from the Washington Post, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Same to you.
Unfortunately, I have to ask a bit of an off-topic question from affordability because news events do intervene, and that is the interviews that White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles gave to Vanity Fair, in which she's quoted as referring to you as, excuse me, and again, not my words, sir, but a conspiracy theorist of a decade, and described your transformation from someone who once opposed President Trump to now his vice president as an act of political expediency. And I'd like to give you the chance to respond to that, sir.
Now, J.D. Vance's response to this is literally perfect. Because is there anybody here in the audience who thinks that being called a conspiracy theorist is a bad thing? As we have said for a very long time, conspiracy theories are simply spoiler alerts, all right? We've been labeled conspiracy theorists for years. I've been labeled a conspiracy theorist for many years before I even started doing this show. And I wear that badge proudly. I may not think that conspiracy theorist is an accurate moniker. I think conspiracy analyst is a more accurate moniker. But I know what conspiracy theorist means to the people who throw it around. And so based upon that, it's one of the reasons we chose the name Baseless Conspiracies for that show. And the people who might call me a conspiracy theorist, eventually they are forced to admit that many of the things that were previously theories are now objective truth.
Well, first of all, if Susie, I'll trust what you said. I haven't looked at the article. I of course have heard about it, but conspiracy theorist. Sometimes I am a conspiracy theorist, but I only believe in the conspiracy theories that are true. And by the way, Susie and I have joked in private and in public about that for a long time. For example, I believed in the crazy conspiracy theory back in 2020 that it was stupid to mask 3-year-olds at the height of the COVID pandemic, that we should actually let them develop some language skills. I believed in this crazy conspiracy theory that the media and the government were covering up the fact that Joe Biden was clearly unable to do the job. And I believed in the conspiracy theory that Joe Biden was trying to throw his political opponents in jail rather than win an argument against his political opponents.
So many good comebacks in the chat. I love it. Conspiracy factualist, conspiracy research instructor. Where's the other one? Conspiracy theorist truther. Let's see. Conspiracy theory and conspiracy fact. Where is it? Conspiracy researcher, conspiracy analyst. Let me see. WS84, I don't know how old you are, so I don't know if you're talking to me or you're talking to somebody else, but let me see. Yeah, anyways.
At least on some of these conspiracy theories, it turns out that a conspiracy theory is just something that was true 6 months before the media admitted it. And that's my understanding.
Now, he goes on to say that, I know Susie, I got no problems with Susie. Whether or not Susie said these things in the way that she did, I still think she's somebody to watch out for. I think she's a dragon lady, and that could be an asset. It could also be a detriment. But I also think that nobody is going to control President Trump, regardless of what anybody may think, regardless of whoever may be positioned next to him. I think that President Trump is always 5 steps ahead of everybody else who is around him. And there may be a lot of people with a lot of plans who surround him, but President Trump is quite literally the maestro of this orchestra. He is the one who is controlling and pulling the strings. And even if people think that they are the ones who are pulling the strings, they are the ones who are being controlled. President Trump is the commander-in-chief for a reason. All right, now, let us take a look real quickly at Garland Favorito, because another conspiracy theory that is about to be proven as conspiracy fact is the theory about Fulton County DA Fani Willis. Of course, many different conspiracy theories that are actually conspiracy facts about this woman, but she is scheduled to testify under oath tomorrow before the Georgia Senate Special Committee on Investigations, and she will be asked about her role in the grand conspiracy designed to take down President Trump, her communications with the White House, her communications with Special Counsel Jack Smith. Isn't it interesting? December 17th, Fani Willis will be testifying at the exact same time as Special Counsel Jack Smith. Neither of them will be able to coordinate their testimony unless they have spoken prior to this. And even if they've spoken prior to this, nobody knows what they will actually say once they are under oath, because nobody knows what questions they will be asked. And nobody, either of them, knows what the Senate Investigative Committee knows. Nobody, Jack Smith, knows what the House Investigative Committee knows. So both of them are going to be in a very unique position where they must tell the truth. And if they don't tell the truth, then they will both be facing charges of perjury. I cannot wait to see what happens from both of those hearings. Now, another conspiracy theory that I think is highly relevant is the conspiracy theory of Lyme disease and the creation of Lyme disease. Lyme disease, if you are informed, you're aware that it was a creation of a lab, biological weapons research lab here in the United States, that was very close to Lyme, Connecticut, which is where Lyme disease first came from. And there was a operation that was in play at this biological weapons research facility to create weaponized ticks, which is exactly how Lyme disease ended up coming about. Weaponized ticks ended up getting out into the world, perhaps on purpose, perhaps not on purpose. But it is now the official position of the United States government that Lyme disease needs to be recognized, and it needs to be recognized honestly. Now, you may not know that Lyme disease in some medical circles is considered to be a mental disorder. There are certain doctors who still don't even recognize, and the medical community at large doesn't necessarily recognize Lyme disease as a true medical condition, because the effects of Lyme disease are different for different people. It exhibits itself in a variety of different ways. And sometimes people are essentially told that they simply have a mental disorder, and they never receive the type of medical attention that they actually need. Now, RFK Jr. and his team at HHS had a press conference earlier today where they talked about the way that the United States government is now going to recognize Lyme disease.
I spend a lot of my time, my life, in the woods, and that experience has now become hazardous across this country. I remember one day in 1987 when I stood in my bathtub and picked 29 ticks off myself. And that was typical in Bedford. If you went out into the woods and you were active, you would get covered with ticks. I was in Martha's Vineyard recently, and I learned that half the adult population of Martha's Vineyard now has alpha gal, the year-round population. So it's become hazardous now to go into the woods. And the MAHA movement is trying to get children to be active, to get them to go outside, to get them to experience nature, not only because that's going to benefit them physically, but also the spiritual connection that we get to God.
No, Lyme disease is not the new bioterror. Lyme disease was always a biological weapon. It's just something that wasn't necessarily recognized. There wasn't the type of research that was going on to make sure that people who became afflicted with Lyme disease received proper medical treatment, because they wanted to ignore it because it was a biological weapon. They wanted to pretend like it just didn't exist, and they wanted to essentially gaslight the people who became sick with Lyme disease.
To our own health and well-being, to the serenity that we have access to only when we're in nature. And now that's become a hazardous experience for people. And we've got to figure out a way to make it safe for children to go back in the woods again.
So the idea is to find a cure for Lyme disease. Perhaps that cure exists in some obscure government bunker, because it was the United States government, with the help of Nazi scientists that came over during Project Paperclip, who created Lyme disease. Now, take a look at this one final short clip from this press conference.
One of the reasons we wanted to host this meeting, as I made clear, is to announce to the world that the gaslighting of Lyme patients is over. And we now...
Wait, Tim, nobody is saying nobody's saying that vaccines don't do their own special thing. There's a lot of shit out there that makes us sick. Are you saying that you don't believe that Lyme disease is a biological weapon? Are you saying that you don't believe Lyme disease is real? I mean, like, there are a whole host of things that can make us sick. There are people who have Lyme disease who have never been vaccinated. I don't understand why we are not smart enough to pay attention to multiple things that are making us sick. Why does it only have to be one thing?
Incidentally, Lyme and COVID are the numbers 6 and 7, respectively, chronic disease in this country after diabetes.
So COVID obviously is a symptom of the COVID vaccine, because I don't know a single person who wasn't vaccinated with the COVID mRNA or, otherwise vaccines, and who has an affliction of so-called long COVID.
Obesity.
Also, Lyme disease has essentially, it's been around for, since it leaked out into the wild, it has gradually expanded and gotten people sick and had all kinds of effects, which are separate from different things that can be attributed to vaccine illness.
Cardiac disease. So the burden is enormous. And the economic costs have not been quantified anywhere. But as Dr. Oz said, there are all kinds of collateral costs when people can't work, when families are destroyed. And I've seen the pressure that it puts on families when you have a child who's chronically ill. One of the reasons.
So, as an example, Tim, I have a friend who is like me, not vaccinated, but is sick with Lyme disease. So, explain that to me, my friend. If you think that the only thing that's getting people sick is vaccines, how is it that somebody could be afflicted with Lyme disease, but also not have gotten any vaccines? It doesn't make sense. They are multiple things. There are a whole host of things out there in the modern world that are making people sick. I understand where you're coming from. Some people are very passionate about one thing. They've chosen that to them is the boogeyman. That's the only thing. And then, everything else is pushed by the wayside. There are people out there who say everything that's making people sick is the chemtrails. There are people out there who say everything that's making us sick is the microplastics. There are people out there who say everything that's making us sick is dioxins, is the chemicals that are in our food. It is genetically modified crops. But I'm telling you that all of it can make you sick. All of it can have different negative, deleterious effects on your health. It doesn't have to be one thing, because there are so clearly a host of man-made, human-created, unnatural afflictions that are affecting people all across the population, all around the country, all around the world. It is not simply just one thing. Vaccines, major problem, okay? But again, there are people out there who've never been vaccinated, got sick with Lyme disease, got sick with a whole host of other things. All right, now, we have a story here about a Texas A&M associate head of graduate chemistry, another scientist connected to a Chinese government-funded lab. His name is Dr. Li Feng, and he received federal grants for a series of sensitive projects. And then after receiving those grants and working on those projects, he took himself and went to work for a Chinese lab. There was a specialist by the name of Alan Phelps. He traced years of deep ties between Dr. Li Feng and these Chinese institutions. He would take extensive travel. He would visit a post at a defense-linked university and at Texas A&M's patent office. He would license then to these Chinese companies. Phelps has documented that Dr. Li Feng held sensitive U.S. federal grants and reviewed American research proposals, giving him insider access to cutting-edge taxpayer-funded work, which likely he then passed on to the Chinese Communist Party. This is, again, a major problem that must be addressed. We simply cannot abide people being allowed to work in these dual capacities. If we have foreigners coming to the United States of America that then gain access to these sensitive government posts and access to sensitive government research, it is reasonable to assume that they're going to turn around and go back to their country of origin and hand that information over. When that is allowed to happen, very serious United States national security interests become totally compromised. And it has been allowed to happen over and over and over again. Very similar to like what happened with Uranium-1 and the transfer of a strategic national security reserve fuel to be placed in the hands of a foreign adversary. Now, the conversation about Russia and the United States working together, notwithstanding, it's bad business. We can be friends, we can be allies, but still have competing objectives. Russia wants the people of its country to be the most comfortable. We, as the United States of America, should want our people to be the most comfortable. we can have points of commonality where we come together and ensure that the people of both of our countries are comfortable. But when you start giving up things like strategic advantages, then obviously that's going to put your people at a disadvantage. All right, real quickly, President Trump yesterday signed an executive order to designate fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction, and he immediately began the continued operation to blow up boats in the Caribbean. This designation as fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction has allowed the United States to take an even harder line stance against fentanyl. They called it a potential chemical weapons threat, and they say that it's not just the cocaine that is being smuggled across the Caribbean. It is also fentanyl that is coming over here as well. They also have designated another cartel, a Colombian Clan del Golfo, as another foreign terrorist organization, which again allows the United States military to take further actions against them and stop these drugs from coming into the United States of America. And shortly after the signing of that executive order, President Trump and the U.S. military completely obliterated 2 more drug boats in the Caribbean Sea. And we're going to watch that, and then we're going to go ahead and do the final thank yous and close out for the night. Hold on. Let me turn on the sound. And you can see here in this brand new unclassified footage, the boat appears to have no fewer than 3 or 4 motors, and boom goes the dynamite. All done. Now let's take a look in brilliant Technicolor. Here's another boat. Appears to have 2 engines on that one. Also blown to high heaven. No more drugs. Well, except for the floating, except for the floating bundles of heroin or fentanyl and cocaine. Boom, there you go. I don't know why they redacted that one. There must have been several people that were visible, and maybe there were some heads and arms that went flying after the bomb went off and took them out. All right. So I am, again, 100% in favor of the administration behaving in this way. Take these people out. Get rid of them. I don't want them coming to the United States. I don't want them bringing these drugs into our country. And one final thank you from our friends over here on Rumble before we go through these final thank yous. There is a reason that you don't hear all that much about molecular hydrogen in the mainstream health media. It isn't a drug. It can't be patented. There's not a lot of money to be made off of selling better water. But molecular hydrogen is created by running a small electric current through water. It produces a form that dissolves into the water and then can be absorbed into the body. It's been studied for reducing oxidative stress and inflammation, 2 of the biggest drivers of chronic pain, joint stiffness, and slow recovery. A lot of that research is tracked by the Molecular Hydrogen Institute out of Utah, and the technology has been used quietly in clinics by professional athletes for years, especially around injury and physical wear and tear. The LifeWater hydrogen bottle makes it accessible. You add tap water, you press a button, and in about 3 minutes, the water visibly changes. It's not a stimulant. It's not going to mask your symptoms. The goal is supporting your body's own recovery process. And LifeWater publishes third-party lab tests, which matters with this kind of technology. So right now, it's about $80 with a 50% promo backed by a 60-day money-back guarantee. If you have a loved one who's dealing with pain, inflammation, or recovery issues, this is a gift that actually makes sense. So to check it out and learn more, go to buylifewater.com or simply scan the QR code that you see on screen right now. There's also a link that will show up in the chat. Thank you very much to Rumble and the people at Life Hydrogen Water as well. All right, final thank yous from our friends first over here on Pilled. Hogleg71. I think that's where we left off. Yes. Hogleg71, thank you for the cookie in the can. Boys Blanc 89, thank you for the cookie. Sean Joe, thank you for 2 cookies. CL Goober says, for the troubled people during this season. God bless you, my friend. Appreciate you. Red Gun 51, thank you for 2 more cookies. And Sean Joe, all-star of the pilled scene. Thank you for 1, 2, 3, 4 more cookies. I really do appreciate it. Oh, and Mary Steele over here on Twitter says Dartmouth Hospital does not recognize Lyme disease. Yes, there are many different health institutions that don't recognize Lyme disease. I've talked to a number of people who have been suffering with Lyme disease for many years, and they can't find doctors that are willing to treat them. It is really frustrating when you're actually sick and all of the tests are run and they look at everything that's happened in your life, and you can specifically point back to the fact that you got bit by a tick and that's when you got sick, and everybody doesn't believe you. Thank you for final thank you over here on Rumble. Cyrus the Great 87. Zach, have your buddy with Lyme disease get smacked by a beehive. I've actually suggested that to him. Everyone who has ever been stung by a lot of bees that also had Lyme disease, they found their Lyme disease was gone after being stung a bunch. Yeah, I have heard that. I actually suggested it to BB, who also has Lyme disease, and I suggested it to my buddy Wes as well. But, you know, he's in another state and he's got his own mind. So sometimes he listens to me, sometimes he doesn't. All right, you guys, I really appreciate all of you. If you haven't yet, do me a favor, please hit the like button. Yeah, I bet Dartmouth College recommends the COVID jab. I guarantee you they recommend the COVID jab. You know, actually today there was a researcher who was involved in the initial testing of the mRNA vaccines, who initially said that they were safe, that now is admitting that, yeah, they actually do cause myocarditis, which is, of course, one among a whole host of different symptoms that they cause, up to and including death and terrible things. All right, please hit the like button. Please hit the red pill. Please hit the thumbs up. Help us out by sharing the show. It would really, really go a long way. And hopefully I will see you guys tomorrow right here at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. I am going to set up a raid before I let you go for the evening. So let me just do that real quickly. And then you guys can go ahead and chill out. Oh, Brad Nabby. I'll send you over to Brad Nabby. Let me go to... Make sure that you say hello to Brad and Abby for me. They are currently live. /raid. Boom. There you go. Brad Nabby live. Okay, say hi to Brad Nabby. We'll see you guys later. Passing out the gold pills. And peace. Yeah. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I don't want to put those on the burger.